Hello, everybody. Welcome to Late Art. It's super early for me to be streaming. Usually, we're streaming and it's like freaking almost midnight, but here we are. You guys voted to have streams around this time frame when I could make streams at this time frame work. Um, it worked out today because I don't start work until 6 p.m. So, but that also means that when the 2 hours are up, I'm gonna have to go. If like we're gonna listen to scary stories again today, but if we're in the middle of a scary story, unfortunately, I might have to cut stream because I have to get ready to go to work and stuff. So I'm just giving you guys that heads up. I think next time I try to do a stream a little bit earlier like this, I might start it at 2 instead of 2:30, just depending on what we're doing. That way I don't necessarily have to completely rush to like leave and stuff. But anyways, today this is the first, well, I wouldn't say this is the first time that I'm streaming at this time, because there was a point where I was doing kind of like mid-afternoon streams. I don't even remember. It was a while ago. One of them was Lost in Vivo because we used to play that and I had to play it during the afternoon because I think I played it once at night and it was not a fun time. So, but yes, we are here early. We are vibing. We are chilling. We are going to listen to scary stories. I'll open one up. We could probably continue the one that we were listening to last time because I don't think we finished it. Like, we finished the story that we were listening to, but I don't think we finished the whole episode. So we'll probably continue with that one. I'm just noticing I have to change the nib on my Apple Pencil because it's fucking done. It's yeah, it's bad. It's about time I change it, actually. So I'm gonna do that in a second. But hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Bones. Welcome to the stream. I know you can't stay because you're currently at work, but I finished all the line weights on your dude here. So I'm literally into coloring. That was the other thing. I finished the line weights off stream, just because it's just line weights. It wasn't really anything that crazy. So I did that off stream. The line weights are done, so we're gonna move on to flat colors and shading today. So that's what we're gonna do. Bones, while you're here, actually, if you're still here, what color are Mint's eyes? Are they mint green? Because I don't know. You just kind of drew them as like black circles. So what color are his eyes? I kind of need to know because my style has actual eyeballs. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different style, but it has to have color in the eyes. So hopefully you're still here to tell me because, like, I don't know. If I don't get a response, I'm just going to make them mint green. But anyways, hello, Argument. Welcome to the stream. Fail, welcome to the stream. The flamboyant rat does indeed return. Facade, welcome to the stream. And Bacon, welcome to the stream. Wow. I'm glad that I have everybody here. I hope you guys are having a good day. Hope you're ready to chill out. Bacon, I know I saw that you're in your area. You have funny number as the temperature. That's fire. It's cold as shit here today. It's cold and raining again. Because, like on Monday we had summer weather and I was literally in shorts. And then today I'm in a hoodie because that's just how the weather is here in good old Canada. All the time. It's very frustrating. Like, start of the week it will be summer and then we just get winter. There's no in between. I don't think we really ever get spring weather. It's always just like really, really hot or really, really cold. I guess it's kind of spring weather today, but it's fucking freezing outside. So I don't know. I'm gonna be here for what I can. However, I did vote for this option because sleeping. That's fair. Yeah, it gets late sometimes, especially when we're doing streams and it's going into like 1:30. Like, I am very much a night owl. I do not mind doing streams that late. However, the world revolves around date people. So I can't always do shit like that. Mint's eyes could be canonically mint green blue tinted. Okay, cool. I feel like the leaves on the trees have been so late. Yeah, I don't know. The weather's been kind of ridiculous. I've been working outside all shift and I feel like I'm gonna get frostbite. Yeah, like it's so cold for no reason. And it was like, literally, like, when I tell you, Monday, I was in shorts and a t-shirt. That's how hot it was. I don't know what the frig is going on. And now it's, like, I swear I could have just heard, like, the rain pouring down. I don't know what's happening. It's so stupid. We were supposed to get a storm, I think, on Tuesday. And we got a lot of wind, but we didn't necessarily get, like, a storm. So I think all the storm is here now. So, I don't know. But yes, we are going to hippity hop into this. Also, actually, can I share this in the chat? I might be able to. Just while I have you all gathered here today, if you did not see my post on the community tab. Oh, some people already saw it. Oh, that's great. Okay, there's a 3-way tie. That's fantastic. We definitely need to break this three-way tie on this post. So, I am currently working on the Okami supercut. I don't know when that's going to be done, because I also don't really know what specifically you guys want in the supercut. So I did a nifty little poll, which I just posted the link in the chat there. If y'all had a moment, it doesn't have to be right away, it doesn't have to be today, but if you guys wanted to check it out, let me know exactly what you were thinking of me including within the supercut, so that I can try to make it best fitted for y'all, so it has all of the things that y'all kind of want to see in it, and I'll cut out stuff. So far, it's completely mixed. So, yeah, I don't really know. I've watched a handful of supercuts, but they all seem to be a little bit different, so it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what I should be putting in there. So yeah. I have picked the bottom option myself. Okay, cool. It's just so I can kind of like gauge, and then if there are specific things that you wanted me to include or exclude from the supercut, you can also comment as well. Just so I kind of know what I'm doing. Alright, what? Okay. I almost played a song that I'm sure would have got me copyright claimed immediately. What is my Spotify doing? Okay, so the one that we were listening to the last time has about 47 minutes left. So we'll just continue listening to this. And then we might end up changing over to a different one after a certain point if we feel like it. Once again, if the volume is too low, if it's too high, please let me know. I think last time everybody said that it was pretty good, and I have the same volume settings on. So I'm hoping that it will be alright. But yeah, okay. Let's get it going. Let's have some fun. This beat is sick. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. Okay. Nobody's talking right now in the podcast, so can't really gauge the frickin' volume right now, but...
I was raised in a place called Marblehead.
Okay, there it is.
On the North Shore of Massachusetts. Overall, it was a pretty nice place to grow up. I got to play a lot of baseball.
Alright, well, let me know if it's too quiet or something.
5 public beaches to ride our bikes over to in the summer.
Let's get killerin'.
And in terms of school and family life, everything was relatively stable for me.
Oh, I didn't change the pen nib. Let me do
that. I tell people I work with that I actually had something of a nice, healthy
It's good?
childhood.
Okay, perfect.
They can hardly believe their ears. You see, although
I'm just gonna, my bottle's gonna disconnect for a second,
eventually to Los Angeles after finding work as a comedy writer. And I'm not gonna drop any names. That isn't what this piece is about.
There we go.
But there's certain writers' rooms where I become known for my very dark and sometimes very bleak.
Okay, everybody's saying the volume's good. Good.
Everyone
good.
I
Good
wrote
to hear.
with during my first major gig assumed that I'd suffered some kind of terrible hardship at a young age.
I can't open the
something
pen
like
nibs. What is
losing a
happening?
parent in a fiery car crash, or getting passed around by lonely priests. So when I told them that in reality my
my
childhood
pen
looked
nib
more like
was
a Norman Rockwell painting than
actually
an after-school
fucked.
special,
Oh my god.
they were kind of shocked.
It's very bad.
And one night, over a few beers after work, one of the other writing staff ended up asking me where my sense of humor comes from, if not from some deep-seated trauma. Now, at first, I told him I wasn't sure. But then as I thought about it, I remembered something that had happened back in Marblehead when I was real young. Not to me, but to these other kids. It wasn't like it unlocked some repressed memory or anything. It was more like I realized that I might have severely underestimated the impact it had on my psyche. I remember how he laughed when I said, actually, there was this one time.
Yes, of course, gotta watch those acrylics.
Because to him, it was like, oh, here it comes. Here comes the repressed trauma. Kind of dark to laugh at, I know, but that's just how we were. But then once we were done yucking it up, he asked me to tell him the story that I was about to launch into when he cut me off. And this is what I told him. Back when I was in the 4th grade, there was a girl in our neighborhood named Sarah. She was a couple of years older than us, in 7th or maybe 8th grade, and I had the biggest crush on her. But then, everyone had a crush on Sarah, or at least wanted to be friends with her because she was nothing short of a goddamned saint. She volunteered at the local church and was involved in a bunch of after-school clubs, but she wasn't some square.
Yeah, I am, okay.
She hung out with us neighborhood kids too, and although her and I weren't exactly close, she was a lot of fun to be around. She was kind too, and boy was she kind. And while that manifested in a couple of different ways, it was never more evident than when she befriended the new kid, Bobo. Bobo, whose real name was like Robert or Bobby,
Bobo,
showed up
like
in the
Mr.
neighborhood
Burns'
when I was a 3rd
teddy
grader.
bear.
He was around the same age as Sarah, so maybe 2 or 3
That's
years
just
older
prime
than
brain
myself.
rot, guys. I'm sorry.
He was super tall and wide for his age, so he looked even older than he was. But right away, we could tell that he had, and I'll put this as delicately as I can, severe learning difficulties. I suppose that these days his parents would have taken him to a doctor, gotten referred to a psychologist, and they'd have a name
And
for
so
whatever
protect
Bobo
the villain.
had.
What is happening? I don't
But
know.
back then, we all just said that Bobo was a little slow. Or touched was the word some of our moms used.
What?
I think if this happened
That's
today,
weird.
his parents would have kept a closer eye on him, but this was the 70s.
That's a really weird thing to
so his
say.
folks let him play outside like any other kid. When we were first meeting him,
I watched
we asked
that
what his name was, and when he said Bobo,
yesterday
we
at
were
like
like
2 a.m.
You mean Bob or Bobby?
Like this one?
And he just sort of looked at us, sort of blankly, and said, yeah, Bobo. And that's when we realized that he was a little different, but we didn't hold it against him. Now, kids can be cruel, and you can bet your ass that we made fun of Bobo from time to time, but
chimpanzee,
it
detective
wasn't like we
chimp.
excluded him or anything like that. If Bobo showed up while we were playing street hockey, we didn't tell him to buzz off. We just made him goalie and watched him laugh whenever the ball hit his pads or helmet cage. He was just happy to be included, I guess, and we were happy to include him.
Mr. Burns. Oh, you
But none of
watched
us
the
took to
Mr.
Bobo
Burns
in the
bear
way that Sarah
episode,
did,
yes.
and he adored her for that.
That's him.
Like
That's
rest
the
of
guy
us,
that's in the
Sarah
story,
must have realized
apparently.
Bobo was a little slow, and since not all of the kids in the neighborhood were as nice as we were, Sarah took it upon herself to be Bobo's best friend. Whenever Bobo was about to go get himself into some trouble, Sarah would be there to get him out of it. And whenever any of the neighborhood bullies came around to give him a hard time, it was Sarah who usually leapt to his defense. When this first happened, no one was particularly surprised that it was Sarah who was brave enough to do the right thing and stand up to the bullies. But Bobo sure was. I don't think he'd ever had anyone fight his corner so hard, and afterwards, him and Sarah were almost inseparable. Bobo didn't go to a regular school, so it wasn't like a 24/7 thing, but if Sarah showed up to hang out on a weekend, you could bet that he was close behind. Bobo and his family moved into the neighborhood right after the holidays of about 71 or 72, and then I remember he and Sarah became super close around St. Patrick's Day, and after that, they were almost always together, but especially during summer vacation of 72. Every single day, Bobo would either be
I don't know
hanging
where
with
this is
Sarah or
going.
walking around the neighborhood asking everyone where she was. Sometimes he'd
Yeah, they
hang
have
with us if
fingerless
she wasn't
gloves.
around, but whenever
They're
she
cool
showed
though,
up,
but they
Bobo
do have
forgot
fingerless
about whatever
gloves.
he was doing and would follow her around like a lost
Oh, I didn't
puppy.
draw the fingerless glove on this
But
hand.
then,
Good
three
good
big
lord.
things
What
happened
am I
that
doing?
summer, and the first was the entrance of a kid called
my.
Jackson. Jackson had already started high school, and like a lot of boys around
Why
Marblehead,
did it undo?
he had a huge crush on Sarah. Now, side note, I guess that it sounds like there was a gross age gap here, but I think Jackson was about to turn 15 that summer, and Sarah had already turned 13 that spring. So as much as this guy was a total douche, it wasn't like he was 18 trying to hit on middle schoolers or anything like that. Now, anyways, Jackson started asking Sarah if she wanted to go to the movies with him, but she kept turning him down. She was polite at first, but Jackson wasn't the type of kid to
Please
take
don't
no
let
for
Bobo
an
be
answer.
evil.
He
Everybody
kept on
thinks
coming
Bobo's the
around, trying
villain.
to hang
I
out
don't
with
know.
us. But it was all very disingenuous, you know.
It could be anyone at this
We could
point.
all tell that he was faking an interest in us to get closer to Sarah, and so could she. See, until Jackson started wanting to date Sarah, he'd been a total butthole to almost each and every one of us. He was a few years older, which already gave him a superiority complex, but you could tell that he thought he was too good for us, and that Sarah was too good for us too.
I feel like this guy's the bad
And
guy,
so he
but I
keeps
think
coming
Bobo
around,
comes back in
hanging
this
out and
story.
trying to cozy up to Sarah. But instead of warming up to him, she's disliking him more and more as she sees just how fake he can be. He came around for maybe 2 weeks or so, seeming like he was willing to play the long game.
A total
But then one
butthole,
day,
yes.
I guess he just sort of ran out of patience, and the mask finally slipped. From what I heard, it started with him asking Sarah why she wouldn't go to the movies with him, or at least hang out, just the two of them sometimes so they could actually talk. She kept saying that she didn't like him like that, and they should hang out as a group since she saw him as a friend. And to that, Jackson responded with something like, "Oh, so what? You got a crush on that goddamn R word?
No, no.
That's why you hang out with him alone all the time."
That's
I didn't hear
sad.
him
What
say
the
it,
hell?
but I sure heard Sarah's reaction, and everyone did. She just about went through him for a shortcut, as my old Irish grandma used to say, or tore him a new one, as we might say today. She absolutely, positively, utterly, and completely eviscerated Jackson, and she did it in front of everyone.
Good for her.
First off, Sarah never yelled, so to hear her suddenly shriek, "What the hell did you just say?" got everyone's attention in an instant.
Good for her.
But then, instead of giving him the old what for, with
Yeah, I'm
maybe
glad
one
the
or two
writer
lines,
censored that word too.
Sarah went off like an artillery battery. In fact, scratch that. She straight up carpet bombed him. She told him how shallow he was, how his breath smelled, how he was fake, a phony, a fraud. She told him she'd never be interested in him. Never. Not as long as either of them lived. Not even if he was the last man on earth. And she
That's
went
kind
off
of
like
so
that
real
maybe
for
2 or
her.
3 minutes straight. And by the time Jackson turned around to walk home, he was completely white as a sheet. He'd been utterly humiliated in front of the whole
get his
of Maple
ass.
Street, and I do mean the entirety of the street. Folks were coming out of their houses to see what all the commotion was about. So old and young, everyone saw Jackson getting spectacularly humiliated by his crush. And we didn't see much of Jackson anymore after that. And good riddance to bad trash, you know? But it didn't take long for word to filter down that, just like he wouldn't take no for an answer, he wasn't about to take such a humiliation lying down.
Uh-oh.
Jackson wanted revenge, and the word
It
on
was
the
his
street was
fault.
he was going to get it by the end of the summer. Anyway, so a few weeks went by and we were all feeling very protective of Sarah, and we were terrified that Jackson and his buddies were going to get her, whatever that meant as a kid. But when 1 week went by,
Hello,
then
SS
2,
Cheesecake.
and
Welcome
Jackson
to
stayed
the
the
stream.
hell
Hope
away,
you're having a wonderful
we
day.
figured things might have blown over. But then one day,
Poser plus
Sarah
stinky
announced that
plus
she had some
ratio.
bad
That
news,
is what
and
Sarah
at
said.
first, we thought it was regarding that whole spat that she had with Jackson. Well, it turns out it wasn't anything to do with that at all, and arguably it was way worse. At the end of the summer, in just a few short weeks, she and her family were leaving town for good. Her dad had been offered a very well-paying job
Are we already
someplace in another
starting
state,
shading?
and to try and get her placed in a
Crazy.
new school,
Also, I'm
they
gonna
were
try
moving
a
towards
new
the end of
shading
August,
technique that I've been
which was
doing
only
as
like
well.
a week away when she told us.
So that will be fun.
Hearing the news so suddenly sucked very hard. I mean, absolutely everyone was sad to see her go. Right after informing us of this bad news, Sarah announced that she also had a big favor to ask of us. Under no circumstances were we to tell Bobo that she was leaving. If he was going to find out, it needed to be face to face. She knew that he was going to be incredibly upset, and hearing it through the grapevine would only upset him even more. If he was going to find out, it had to be from her, and it had to be at the right time and in the right place. We all understood why Sarah was approaching things
So
that way.
I'm gonna shade
We
it.
were all sad to
There's this
hear that
video
she
I
was
saw
leaving,
where
and if
you
we were
do
sad,
your base
then Bobo
shading,
would be inconsolable.
but then
The
you
only
do
question
another
was,
layer,
how was she going to tell him?
and you do more
In
shading.
the end, Sarah decided that she was going to take Bobo for a walk
But then
somewhere
you
private on the night
turn the
before she was due to
opacity
leave.
down,
She
to
delivered
about
the news
50,
in as gentle a manner as possible, in private,
and then you get this
as
kind
close
of
to the
like
date as
gradient
possible. And
cell
that way they got
shade
to spend as much
almost.
time as possible
So
together,
that's kind
just
of
being
what I'm gonna
happy
do.
before a nice goodbye and a clean break. We all thought that was a good idea, and somehow we managed to stay tight-lipped around Bobo so that he didn't find out that she was leaving until the date of Sarah's choosing, which seems like a minor miracle now that I think about it with kids. Or maybe someone did let it slip, and he either didn't pick up on it or didn't believe it, who knows. And so about a week goes by, and it comes to the day before
layered
Sarah's
effect.
departure.
It does
which,
look
if
really
you're
cool
following,
once you
is
like
also the day
do
that she chosen to
the
say
whole thing.
goodbye to Bobo. I'm guessing her plan was to walk him down to the beach, a small stretch of sand just up the street from where we lived. I didn't know where she was taking him at the time. I just saw the two of them walking off while saying a whole mix of things. While a handful of us were like, well, hope he takes it well, most of us knew that he was going to be completely devastated. The only thing that had stopped him being completely heartbroken was Sarah's method of delivery, because if anyone could sufficiently soften that blow, it was going to be her. But then maybe 20 to 30 minutes later, way before we expected Sarah and Bobo to return,
Let my man Bobo
a kid
win.
comes
I
running up
know.
the street with a bloody nose
Uh-oh.
and looking scared out of his mind. He'd just run into Jackson and his buddies, who had just heard the news that Sarah was leaving that very next morning. And he must have heard the news somehow, gathered up two buddies of his, and then they jumped on their bikes and rode across town to look for her. But then on the ride over, they see the kid who came running up the street, and knowing that he was a friend of Sarah's, they beat the crap out of him until he told them where she was. They were riding over to the beach right at that very moment.
Oh no.
And Jackson was apparently carrying a pocket knife.
Oh dear
Obviously,
God.
hearing that sends all of us into a panic, and then anyone who had parents who lived nearby ran off to tell them so they could call the cops. And since my parents' place was just a block away, one of those kids obviously was me. I told my mom, and she grabbed the phone and called the authorities, but when I told my dad, who was working on his car with my uncle, they jumped in my uncle's car and drove off in the direction of that beach.
Oh no.
I wanted so badly to go with him, but my dad told me to stay with Mom while they went off to try and get there before the cops did so they could stop things from escalating. They didn't have the whole story. They basically just heard some high school kid is about to stab Sarah down at the beach, and then they took off like hell on wheels to try and stop it from happening. It sounds kind of crazy to think about it now, because at the time, once the cops and my uncle and dad were involved, I figured everything would be okay. Grown-ups had power to fix every other kind of problem, so why not that one too?
No, something horrible
It
is
was
gonna
only when
happen.
my dad and uncle
I
returned
have
home
a
a few
feeling.
hours later that I realized that things hadn't gone according to plan. They didn't give me any real details. They just told me that two kids had gotten hurt really bad at the beach, and that they were really sorry because two of them were kids that I hung out with. And in my mind, my dad and uncle and the cops had gotten there too late, and Jackson had stabbed Bobo and Sarah with that knife that he was carrying. I later overheard that a third kid had been taken away by the cops, and I figured that that kid could probably be none other than Jackson. But as it turns out, that wasn't the case at all, and my best guess of what happened had been almost completely off. Jackson had arrived at the beach, presumably with plans to scare, hurt, or maybe even kill Sarah as revenge for publicly humiliating him. But what Jackson hadn't planned on was Bobo not being even remotely scared of the knife that he was carrying. Jackson approached, took out the knife, and then, according to Jackson's friends, Bobo just sort of rage rushed him, if that makes sense. He got all cut up in the process, but he somehow got control of Jackson's knife hand and then wrapped his free hand around the guy's throat and squeezed with all his might. Jackson's friends freaked out and ran off when they saw Jackson get taken down like that.
He was about to stab a girl, though.
I'm guessing Sarah did. At least that's what Bobo said happened, but instead of listening to her, he just kept squeezing Jackson's neck until he stopped squirming and fighting for air.
Oh, no.
I heard that Bobo later said that after Jackson stopped fighting, a very distraught Sarah had asked him why he did it, why he'd killed Jackson instead of just stopping him. Bobo said it was because Jackson would have never left her alone. And that's when Sarah tells Bobo how that wasn't true. How she wouldn't have had to worry about Jackson after that day because she was leaving town in the morning. I guess Bobo was still kind of berserk because instead of getting sad when he heard the news or feeling bad about what he'd done, he turned his rage onto Sarah.
Oh, no.
And did to her the exact
Bobo,
same
no!
thing
Oh,
that he'd just
my
done to
God.
Jackson. Took her down, wrapped a hand around her throat, and
Bobo,
squeezed.
no! You were supposed to be the hero of this story.
We didn't find all that stuff out until much later on. It wasn't until the end of high school that we were able to
this just went
dredge
insane.
through all the rumor and hearsay and finally get to the actual truth. But by then, I guess it was far too late. The whole community had already gone through the horror and grief of learning what Bobo had done, but at the time, at least the adults had the whys and hows, and us kids really had nothing to go on. Many of us were still under the impression that Sarah's death had somehow been an accident, that Jackson had stabbed or cut her, which, in turn, had sent Bobo into a murderous rage. But then to learn that Bobo had killed Jackson before turning on Sarah in some sort of blackout rage, that was just far too much for people to handle.
Yeah, this story is sad, bro. It twisted my heart too.
Bobo because they couldn't deal with what an asshole their kid was. And while he was most definitely a total goddamn prick, he wasn't the one who hurt Sarah. Hell, he didn't even get near her.
He was going to,
There's
though.
no doubt that he contributed to the whole situation. I mean, I don't think Bobo would have reacted the way that he did if he hadn't been in such a keyed-up state of mind.
Also, thank you,
But
Bones.
that doesn't change the fact
Thank you.
that it was Bobo who killed his best friend in the world, not Jackson. I mean, he said it himself at the police station after he was arrested at that scene. And as a result, I guess they took him off to some home someplace where he might still be living all these years later. And when I was done telling that story, I remember my coworker saying something like, "Yeah, I knew something was lurking behind that dead-eyed smile, and there it is. There's your childhood trauma."
Oh my God.
And you know something? I guess he was right. I think that whole episode had a profound effect on me as a kid. But after pushing it to the back of my mind for many years, I could barely even remember it, let alone acknowledge that it was probably one of the most formative events of my entire childhood. I mean, half the reason I think my own childhood was so peachy was the fact that neither me nor any of my family were murdered in such a horrible, tragic fashion. It's just crazy to think that having a few beers after work led to me unlocking a part of my psyche that I never even knew was there. But the effect that it had the most was that I'm now planning on reaching out to Sarah's surviving relatives. I feel like I should reach out and let them know that even all these years later, there's people outside her family that still remember her with affection. But I'm not even sure if that'll be of any help, now that the damage has long been done.
Guys, that one was upsetting. Like, all of these usually are upsetting, but that one was upsetting. I thought Bobo was gonna be the unspoken hero, but, apparently not. I still think it was What's-His-Face's fault, though.
Big savings? Rakkuten's Bigton. They Rakkuten.
Its occurrence.
Whoa, I was trying to
Driver
skip
from
that ad.
Germany, and this is a story.
Okay. I skipped too far. Jackson, yeah, I think it was still mostly his fault, to be completely honest with you.
Subscriber from Germany, and this is a story that happened many years ago in my hometown. It's quite an old story, but it's something that you can most certainly verify via news stories because this was a very
Apparently
famous story
Poe
in
was the
Germany at the time of
unspoken
its
killer.
occurrence.
Yeah, I don't know. That was
And so a few
not the
houses
turn I
down
thought
from me
it
in the
was going to
street where
take.
I grew up, there was this old guy who lived with his wife and dog in a big detached house. He was a bit of a shut-in, as you might say, and I never saw him talking to anyone, and the only reason you ever saw him leave his house was just to go walk his dog. We lived on the same street in peace for the longest time, and although he seemed very antisocial, everything appeared to be regular. Then one day, things started to go downhill. At some point, people started to notice how the car belonging to the man's wife was no longer in the driveway, and then later on, it was confirmed that she had divorced him and moved away. This was only discovered because the lady's former work colleague just so happened to have bumped into a neighbor, so it took 2 weeks for people to realize that she was gone for good. We were sad for him, but it is a fact of life that marriages do fall apart, and he seemed to be acting like his usual self, so no alarms were raised.
No, that's red
One morning,
flag.
sometime later, I left my house at the usual time to catch the school bus. Our street is relatively quiet, and normally there isn't much stuff going on, but on this particular morning, things were looking very different. There were a few neighbors on the street, and my parents said that there's something wrong with the old guy, which lived on the end of the street, but nothing specific was known at that time. Everyone seemed very worried because apparently he'd gotten into an argument with someone while walking his dog, and this neighbor was shocked that he was even talking to them, so when the man started screaming about something, people were shocked enough to come out of their houses to see what was going on.
Yeah, at least we got Cunty Rat.
You can just imagine. This man has
This
not
is
talked to anyone for quite literally
the
years.
palate
And
cleanser
then all
of the
a sudden, he decides to begin
story.
screaming in the street, and it made for quite a spectacle. I wanted to stay and see what was going on, but my mother and father insisted that I make my way to school and avoid being late. And so off I went, and for the whole day, I thought about it every so often. I wasn't obsessed, but I was curious to see if the man had been arrested or taken away, or if there'd been any further confrontations. I was actually quite excited to hear from my mother and father what had happened, but to think of that feeling now makes me feel a deep shame in myself, because what I arrived home to was not entertaining.
Uh-oh.
As I returned and
Here we
exited
go.
the bus at the bus stop, I saw that the whole street
Oh, hello,
was
Delito. Welcome
completely
to the
blocked
stream.
off
Hope
and
you're having a
evacuated.
wonderful day.
Police cars and officers were everywhere, and even a SWAT team was there. I had no idea what was going on, so I rushed to the house, met with my parents, and they explained to me that the old guy tried to destroy the entire street in some kind of manic episode.
What?
He flooded his entire basement with
Oh my god.
gas
Oh
and
my
had an
god.
improvised bomb in his garden shed, which was essentially a big pile of propane gas tanks tied together. A timer clock and a toaster served as the fuse mechanism for both the bomb and the basement.
That
And the whole thing was
that
rigged to
took a
explode
turn.
between 7 to 8 a.m. in the morning, with a smaller version of this explosive being placed in the recycling bin of the neighbors directly next to him. Before
You're
the
good.
old
You're
man
vibing
triggered
with the
bomb, he
501st
wrecked
Battalion.
the
What?
entire interior of his house by smashing and breaking everything. He then went to the garage
You know,
and
we
carried out the
chillin'.
destruction, which is strangely how he got caught. A neighbor then heard all the noise and became suspicious. He looked through the garage window, and the fumes were so strong that he noticed the distinctive smell of gasoline. He broke the door to enter the house and discovered the mess the old guy had created. And that's what started the so-called argument that everyone had heard that morning. The neighbor immediately called the cops after the screaming had finished, and that's when everyone was waiting outside. But right at the same time, my parents scolded me and told me to hurry along to school. Our neighbor was
Yeah,
trying
I'm
his
not.
best
I
to
know
activate
Star
the
Wars, but I
explosive
don't
devices
know it
and blow us all to
that
kingdom
much.
come,
You know what I
as they
mean?
say. The bomb
If you've seen
squad
Revenge
from
of the
city
Sith,
police
that's the
force later said it was a
battalion
miracle
Anakin
that the
led.
device
Okay,
did not
cool.
detonate. It was well put together, with the only parts that were suboptimal being the timer
So you're
and
chilling with that
detonator.
battalion, I get it.
If our neighbor had taken just a little more care when putting together these two aspects of his device, I would most certainly not be around to write this to you. The police arrived not long after I departed, and after gaining entry to the home, they arrested the man before he could correct his mistakes and detonate the device. And for a while, it looked like we were going to have to stay in a hotel overnight, but the bomb squad managed to remove the device around an hour after I arrived home from school, and we were able to re-enter our houses once the police truck had departed. I heard that after he was arrested, the man was deemed unfit to stand trial, and basically went straight from the courtroom to a psychiatric hospital, where he has remained ever since. From what I understand, he is very unlikely to ever be
I was
discharged,
referencing the battalion
as his
because it's the
psychological
1st
condition
of
has
May,
not improved,
5/1,
he
50.
still
Ah,
harbours a
okay,
very
I
deep
get it, I get it.
hatred
Are you
of the world
excited for
around
May
him.
the 4th, though? That's another Star Wars day. Hello, Jujuka. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're having a wonderful day. We are listening to a Let's Read podcast of some true scary stories. I believe we are at the part with the scary neighbor stories.
From the ages of around 6 to 11, my family and I lived in a very rough
Yeah, we're at the
neighborhood.
scary neighbor stories
One
part
night it
right
was
now.
just my mom, myself, and my two siblings at home. My dad used to drive truck for a living, which obviously meant that he was away an awful lot, meaning a lot of the time it was just our mom taking care of us. That night at around
May 4th?
midnight,
May 4th
someone
is
started
it's Star
ringing
Wars
our
Day.
apartment's buzzer. My mom woke up and went to the little intercom to ask who it was, and no one answered.
What do you mean no,
She
Bacon?
thought that
That's
maybe it
Star
was
Wars
some
Day.
kids playing Ding Dong Ditch or something juvenile like that, so instead of being scared, she was just annoyed as she went back to bed. But then about 30 minutes later, someone starts buzzing for
I already
a
know,
second
King. I'm
time.
going to watch all the good Star Wars
Mom
shows
gets
and
up
movies,
again
and I'm going
peers
to
through the
stream
side
Lego
window to
Star
see if
Wars.
she can spot
Yo!
anyone out there.
It's been so long
But she
since I
can't
played
see a
Lego
single
Star
living
Wars.
soul.
I had the
And that's
ones
when she
on
started to freak
my
out.
DS, and I used to play
She
them
goes back
a
to the room and
lot.
grabs my dad's gun,
But that
and
sounds like
sits
it's
in
going to
the
be
living
mad
room in the
fun.
dark,
I'll have to
waiting
see if I
for
can catch
someone
your
to try
stream
and
on the
break in.
4th.
After God knows how long, there was
I'm sure it's
going to
be a good time.
This time, Mom said
Bacon
she
is
very
not a fan
calmly
of Star
explained that if they carried on
Wars.
harassing us, she was going to call the cops.
I just
and if they tried
realized
to break
that my
she would shoot.
grandma's birthday is Star Wars
Again,
Day.
there was no
Oh, that's
response,
awesome.
so
And
she
also
went back
happy
to the
early
window to
birthday
see
to your
if she could
grandma.
spot anyone, and that time, she did. She said that there were 3 guys out there, faces covered, all looking up at the window, all looking right at her.
No, that's creepy.
Mom said she rushed to call the cops. All the while, me and my 2 siblings were asleep in our bedroom. No one tried to break in right away, but my mom had to wait for an hour for the cops to finally show up, and when they did, they buzzed our buzzer, causing her to freak out one more time, thinking that the masked men were outside again. Thankfully, it was the cops, and she invited them up to do a quick look and around the outside of the apartment building to make sure no one was hanging around. After their search, they tell my mom that they had found a piece of barbed wire about 4 feet long
Oh my
next to
god.
the front door and asked
Oh
if it belonged
no.
to my mom. She said that it wasn't hers and asked why. The cop then told her that there was a chance that it belonged to whoever was knocking at the door. Mom asked if they thought the people were planning on using it, and although they assured her that there was no way of
Oh,
knowing
okay.
that,
I'm
she's
sorry. I
convinced
didn't
to
know
this
that
day
that
they were
was bad
planning
luck in some
on
different
torturing
parts of the
us.
world. Well, my apologies. I wasn't
However,
aware of
what
that.
the cops did confirm is that she was very smart not to open the door to see who was there. Otherwise, it could have cost her life.
I'm also going to do the
They also
Fortnite
said that
Star
they'd
Wars
patrol the neighborhood
season.
until morning and
Nice.
do a thorough
I'm
investigation.
not a huge
once there was
Fortnite fan,
daylight.
but I respect people who like
And later on
Fortnite.
that morning, once my siblings and I were at school, they called back to talk to her about something.
Ma'am, do you own this
They
4
said that
feet
when they were
length
searching
barbed
around the
wire?
house, they found footprints leading around to the back of the
Yeah,
home,
that's a weird
leading up to
question.
my bedroom window. You see, our apartment was on the 2nd floor, so scarily accessible to anyone with a fairly
I don't
long
think
ladder.
anyone should own 4
They also
foot
found
length of
nicks in the
barbed wire, to be
windowsill
completely
where the
honest with
person or
you.
persons were trying to pry open the window to break in, but failed. My mom always suspected that one of our neighbors had been involved, because he would always stare very creepily at my mom whenever they crossed paths.
Ugh.
He also knew
I don't
when
like
my
that.
dad wasn't home since he knows what vehicle he drives. Mom said that was the final straw of wanting to get the hell out of that place, and as soon as my dad came home, she gave him a very strong ultimatum. Find us someplace else to live, or she was leaving him and taking us kids with her.
Wow.
And so within
Crazy.
6 months, we were living somewhere else, and I celebrated my 12th birthday someplace where she actually felt safe, and not in a neighborhood where she felt like she needed to sleep with one eye open.
That is creepy. I believe this is
This
probably
account pertains to my current upstairs neighbor.
going to be the last story
He
in this
disappears for
episode,
weeks
so
at a
we'll
time,
have to
and
look
then
for
you
something
suddenly
else.
hear what sounds
after.
like a slaughterhouse happening at 11 p.m. on a
Oh
weekend,
my god, this
announcing
started
that he's now home.
interesting.
There's been a lot of things that have happened, but the top two that pretty much sum up everything you need to know about just how creepy this guy is this. One day, I was bringing up groceries and he offered to help. I told him thank you and assumed that he would just take the bags to the second floor landing, place them outside the door, and then continue up to his apartment, like our other neighbor who has done this exact thing before. He follows me back out to my car and then stands about 4 inches behind me as I lean into the trunk of my car to get the last 2 bags. He takes all of the bags and then walks upstairs. As I finish saying the, "Oh, thank you, you really didn't have to do that," lines and unlock my door, he goes, "Oh, it's no problem. I know your old man leaves for work early and you're home alone."
Oh, ew, creepy.
I barely open
I
the
don't
door
like
enough
that.
to walk into my apartment before I can turn around, and he's walked in. He opened up my fridge and puts the milk in. And he
What?
starts looking around our apartment and into our bedroom.
Oh no.
And now, just for context of why I didn't flip out and start screaming, it was 8 in the morning and the 2 other people who live in our building were gone, so literally no one would have heard me. He's probably 6'2"
I still would have
and I'm
started
5'5"
screaming.
if I have on some thick shoes. And I say, "Okay, thanks for the help, I'll see you around." And he continues to dig through the fridge and looking towards my
I'm not gonna
bed.
lie, I was about to give the pest control guy the
Then
Anakin
he turns
Skywalker
and starts
treatment with
stepping towards me.
a dark
And then he
saber.
realizes that I have a very large butcher
The women
knife
are popping off
4
today in these
inches away from
stories.
my hand.
It's fire though.
And then he chooses to leave. I call my husband, who's at work an hour
I heard
away,
random
crying,
knocking
tell
and I
him
was
what just
already
happened.
locked and loaded, but
That
I
night
was
he goes
it
to
was just the
confront
pest
guy,
control guy doing
and he won't
his
answer the door.
business. That would have been
And so
funny,
my
but also
husband goes up
not.
the next day, and the guy breaks down crying.
Also,
and tells my
Toledo
husband
Bones
he
is
doesn't
at
remember
work, so he's
anything, and
only
so
popping in
sorry.
and out of the
He was
stream
just
every
trying
now
to
and
be very
then.
neighborly. And my husband just
Yeah,
tells
he's
him,
freezing his
"My
bones
wife's a
off.
tough
Yep.
girl, and she can carry the groceries up herself." Sometime later, we woke up one night hearing someone yelling and screaming outside. When we look out our living room window, we see the upstairs creeper with blood streaming down his face.
Okay.
He could barely stand, screaming at the police, "I'm not going to the damn hospital."
What?
Apparently, he had gotten into a fight at the pool hall down the street with 4 or 5 other guys and gotten his ass kicked. Eventually, the cops got a hold of him and took him to the hospital in cuffs. And the next morning, I went to go get groceries alone, and my husband didn't have to work that day. When I came home, he was standing outside smoking a cigarette, and you could tell that he was still messed up from whatever he was on the night before. This time, he walked straight up to the car and acted like he was waiting for me to get out, but he stood by the trunk. This was also the first time that I had seen him since the initial incident that he could have thought my husband wasn't home. I called my husband, and when he saw that I was on the phone and heard my husband coming down the stairs of the building, he took off running around the corner. My husband took
Also,
me to the
Toledo,
store
when I'm
that day
done
and got
drawing
me a
Bones'
gun.
character, I'm gonna
And now
start
anytime
drawing
he sees
your
me alone,
character.
he just stares, but
Also, I don't
if
know
my
if I'm
husband's
gonna
around,
get to that
he
on
acts
this
like he
stream.
doesn't
I
even
might
see
do
us.
start a sketch
And I know
depending
this might
on when
come
I finish
across
this,
as
but
just
that's
sort
the
of
plan.
dumb idiot just
You are
whining
next
about
on the
our
list.
antisocial neighbors. But
to be
sometimes I
chibified.
get really scared being here whenever my husband isn't around, and since writing all of this down has made me feel just a little bit less alone, I guess it was worth it.
Oh, I think there's another story. I thought that was going to be the last one. But it looks like there's maybe one more.
This is a real story that has
Is he working in a freezing unit as a building, or am I so far away from your place on Earth? Today is the hottest day of the year. No, it's freezing here. In Canada, during spring, you get two different types of weather. You get summer or winter. There's no in between. So today is winter.
During my first year at university, I moved into student accommodation and met some really nice people. It was a good year, one in which I met my boyfriend, and I greatly enjoyed my time away from my family and discovering what independence really meant. As second year came by, I decided with some friends to move into a house.
Yeah, spring.
rented by
It's
student
like Monday was summer. Today is winter. There's like barely any in between.
At least we had our own house and weren't restricted as much with.
Yeah, that one
laws,
had a
which
weird
meant that
ending.
we could throw parties and all of that.
It did have
I
a
had
weird
ground
ending.
floor room, and my window gave into a small backyard in which I could go smoke every day, as I am a smoker, and in which there would be a very thin wooden door giving into the other side of the street where you would put your bins. The door could only be closed and locked from inside the backyard, but since it was an old door, we had to attach some strings to keep it closed for good. I had neighbors on each side of the house, so we were surrounded by families and some other student accommodations. The neighbors on the right of us were 5 boys who looked
We don't
way
love
over
the
age of
cold,
being
no.
in university,
We get cold.
and they seemed very
We don't
strange,
love the
and at
cold.
one point, I happened to run into one of them outside of our house one
We
day
hate the
because of a
cold.
police intervention. He said one of his flatmates attacked him and the others. with
Canada
a
is
kitchen
hot.
knife,
You're
and
so right.
afterwards had tried to burn the kitchen down. I heard some screams, and so I went outside with my flatmates and saw one of them. He was covered in blood and cuts, with many on his arm, and a wound on his head inflicted by the kitchen knife. My flatmates and I didn't know what to do, so we offered him our help to clean himself up, and then gave him an old t-shirt to change out of his bloody clothes. We then saw the guy.
Yeah, we don't love the cold. We live the cold. Yep.
Police and into a van, presumably after being arrested for attacking his flatmates. I don't know anything more about the story, and the police didn't really tell us anything either. But anyway, the guy who we helped was quite weird. He said a lot of BS and kept trying to flirt with me. But I didn't really care in the moment, as we just wanted to make sure that he was okay, because seeing him in such a sorry state was very shocking. And after some time had passed, I would be coming back home from uni and see him quite often in the street. I never said a word to him, but he'd always be looking at me. One day, he came up to me in the street while I went to the corner shop and started talking to me weirdly, in such a way that I really didn't feel comfortable. I told him I was too busy to talk to him in the street, and he replied, "Oh, that's okay. I'll just wait for you at the front of the house then. We can get to know each other better when you come back."
Ew.
And needless to say, I was exceptionally creeped out by this. I bought my drink at the shop and headed back to my street, and as I turned onto the street where my house was, I saw him with his flatmate sitting on my doorstep, waiting for me.
No, that's weird.
And I panicked. I went back next to the corner shop and called my only guy flatmate to ask him to open the door and tell those guys to go away. But Sod's law applied in this case, as the English might say, and not only was he not home when he answered my call, but no one else was either.
Oh,
I
that's
literally waited for an
unfortunate.
hour walking up and down the high street before I went back to check if the coast was clear. And then when I saw that it was,
do you mind if I draw your
I sprinted
character as a
back home
Star
and
Wars
locked the front
character?
door.
I don't mind at all. I think that would be really
After this
cool.
already pretty scary encounter, I just
The
tried
internet
to
is
avoid
fun.
the
I
guy
am
and mostly
sweating. You are
succeeded for a
freezing,
while.
and we can talk. I
Then one
enjoy
day,
this. It is
as
kind
I
of
went
cool.
smoking in the
I'm a
backyard,
little jealous
I
though for
noticed that
anybody
the
who has
wooden
nice
door,
weather
which
today.
is always closed, was open.
Do
and
you
the
want to be a
strings that we
Jedi
put
or
there to
bounty
keep it
hunter
closed
or
were cut
Sith
off.
Lord? That's
For
a
whatever
hard
reason,
question.
I didn't think anything
I like
of it and
Jedis,
just
but
closed
I
the door
definitely don't
again
want to
and
be a
put new
Jedi.
string on it. thinking it was one of my flatmates who took the bins out and just didn't tie it back.
Maybe a bounty hunter. That would
The
be
weird
fun.
neighbors would
Maybe that.
very often
I think
scream
that would
and
be
yell
peak.
and fight in their house, and
If you
it would
want
wake
to,
me
of
and my
course.
flatmates up in the middle of the night, but we kind of got used to it after a while.
Another early stream.
But
Oh,
one
hello,
evening,
David.
my
Welcome
boyfriend
to the
slept over
stream.
like
I
he
hope you're having a
usually did,
wonderful day.
And he
You
usually
didn't miss
never,
too
ever wakes
much.
up because of a noise. Woke up in the middle of the night because of a bang and some whispering.
Just some disturbing
I was
stories.
sound asleep, so he very silently woke me up, and we both
And
just
some
waited
shading.
in the dark and listened for any noises. Suddenly, we heard the wooden door.
This
just
is where we're
bang,
at with the drawing right
just
now.
shot open and some footsteps next to my window. I always had my window open because it would get really warm inside, so we both just froze there. And then we heard the door leading to the backyard get shaken softly as if they were trying to get inside, and then they stopped. Luckily, we had the curtains closed so they couldn't see us, but we were ready to get dressed and get the F out of that room and lock them in if they came in from the window. Then we just heard my window move and get more open, and one of the guys saying something in a different language that we didn't understand, and started to hear them trying to get in. My boyfriend and I just shot up out of bed, took my phone and put clothes on, and ran out of the room and out of the house.
Oh, my
I then
chat's
called my
going
flatmates and told them to lock
little
themselves
nuts.
in their
Let me
rooms.
catch up.
Then the police, very luckily,
God bless
came
the
in less
internet
than
for
5
giving us the
minutes,
Tumblr
as the
sexy man
headquarters were a couple of
contest.
streets down from
True.
us. I don't remember anything after the police came. I think my boyfriend and
If
I
Canada
were in
must
shock.
suffer so that I may
They
have
ended up
perfect
catching one
temperature
guy,
here in
the
Connecticut,
other fled,
then
and
so be it.
was later found a few streets
Okay.
up smoking weed.
But like,
The
also
police
you
told
want
us
me
that
to
they went
suffer in
inside
the
their house
cold,
and found a lot of
fail.
cocaine and heroin.
No,
and
it's
that they were
fine, it's
carrying
fine.
a massive kitchen knife with them.
You can be a dark Jedi
I
but
was so
bounty hunter?
confused
Hell
as I had
yeah.
never done
Yo,
anything
yes,
to
let's
offend
go.
or
That's
do anything
perfect.
wrong to my neighbors, so the idea of them breaking in with God knows what intentions.
Bacon,
with
you can
kitchen
turn
knife
off reactions
terrorized
as a
me and my
mod. Yo,
boyfriend.
let's go.
The two guys ended up being arrested, and one of them was put in prison for 2 years.
Drawing goes
for
crazy
carrying
right now.
a
It's
weapon
very
with
fun.
intention to harm.
It's looking really
I
good.
never heard anything else from the police, and
It's like
I
80
moved back
degrees
home
down
a few
here,
months
but
later
it's
as I was so
surprisingly
scared,
nice.
and it tormented me for months on
Cries
end,
in
not knowing what would have
Celsius.
happened if my boyfriend didn't wake up. I'm now
Weather
still
in my
coping with it
small
and
city is
finding it really
excellent
tough
right
to
now.
get over
Does
it.
everybody have good weather except
I'm
me?
always
What the
asking
frig?
myself,
This is
what if?
unfair.
And what would have happened? I now very often wake up because of the slightest noise.
Also,
and
hello,
get
J Master.
horrible
Welcome
nightmares
to
because
the
of it.
stream. I hope you're
But
having
hey,
a wonderful
At least I'm
day.
still with my boyfriend, and we often talk about it, which does help me a lot.
I was not really listening to this story because I was just talking to everybody. So, something, something, something. Scary flatmate. I heard that at least. Yeah. Okay. So me and Fasad. I didn't know if you were still here or not. So me and you
So,
have the same
this
weather,
has been
but
a few years since this happened, but
oh, there's
to this
another
day,
story.
I
Okay.
feel almost sick thinking about that night.
So
When
me
I
and
was in my
Fasad have the
very
same
early
weather,
20s,
but
I lived in
apparently
a
everybody
very
else has
cheap
nice
and
weather.
Very crappy apartment block that was known for being extremely sketchy. There was this neighbor that always seemed to be listening to James Brown
We should
and Motown,
jump to a new
so
story beat.
even though it
We'll
seemed a bit
definitely
off,
listen
I
to a
thought,
different
how could he
story
be that
in a little
weird if
bit.
he's just chilling to some old school music. I'd heard him blast his music and have louder conversations, but then again,
I think this
we
has
both
to
had
be the
studio
last one
apartments
that's
that
on
were
here.
touching, so I would just play music to not hear him so loudly. Now one night, he was drinking a lot and had his girlfriend around. You could hear him being belligerent.
Don't worry,
but
King. Just wait till
nothing that
June
seemed out of
comes.
the
It's going to
ordinary for him,
become
I suppose.
Mustafar.
wasn't too
What?
late,
Mustafar in
So I headed out for the
Florida.
night with some friends while my
I
boyfriend
went to
stayed in.
Florida once. This is
I got
before I
dropped
knew
off at
you,
around
though.
1
But I
a.m.
went
or
to
so as we
Florida
were driving into the parking lot from afar,
during March,
we
and it
saw
was
my
super
neighbor
hot during
outside
March,
with some
like to
cars
me.
in the apartment,
So
looking sort of odd. Okay.
the eyes are missing the
Whatever,
whites,
this
right?
guy
Yeah, I
was
haven't done the
kinda
whites
just
yet. I'll
creepy
probably
anyways.
do that next.
And at that point,
I
my
just wanted
friends
to
were
get.
more
I
weirded
usually
out
do the
than I
eye
was.
whites when
But
I do the
didn't think
shading.
much of it and had them drop me off near the entrance because it was easier
Yeah,
for them
everybody.
to
So
leave.
everybody is. It's
And
hot
that
for
was
them
until they drove away,
right now,
and
except me
I
and
walked up to
Facade.
go into my apartment,
The-
which
the
I
Canadians
had
are
to
cold
ask
today.
him first. I swear my heart dropped because he was standing still by then with his body hidden by the bush. that
Yeah,
was
I'll do
between
the
our
eye
apartments.
whites. Well, actually, no.
Like
I'm gonna
the
shade the
funny
earrings and I'll
Simpsons
do the eye
meme, but
whites.
Actually not funny whatsoever because as I approached, It seemed like he thought maybe I didn't see him because it was so dark out and he was still as a statue. I waved and mumbled hi because I freaking
I guess
see
I should
you,
probably
and
do
I'm not going to
this.
pretend that I don't at this point, so don't even try anything since no one was out on a weekday at this hour. And at that point, after acknowledging that he was there, he stepped out of the side of the bush and came into the dim porch light, and never in my life have I looked into eyes like that.
Uh-oh.
My heart is racing as I type this. They were widened, dark, fully dilated just like a wild animal, almost lunatic if I were to express his energy as well. He didn't say anything, but gave me a bone-chilling look, and I ran into my apartment immediately. My boyfriend was drowsy since it was late, but he did say my neighbor's music was loud and continued for some time, and he heard a ton of noise and arguing earlier but didn't think anything of it. And that night, all night we heard thumps, and it sounded like furniture was moving. Now, it just weirded me out.
Dude got
knowing that
mad
he was
moving
awake
around
in that
his living
state that I
room?
viewed him in, which seemed
What?
almost primal. The next morning, I heard the cops outside banging on his door and was partially relieved to see them, but then super scared of why they were there in the first place. And they took him away in handcuffs shortly after demanding to be let in and asked me when was the last time I talked to or seen him, and I told him about that night. The arguing noises, frightening encounter, and thumping
The
all
furniture.
night. What I
Dude,
found out during the
stop.
next day
Why
would
does
make my
Procreate
stomach
do
turn
that?
forever. I was told by this groundskeeper details I will keep simple since it was horrendous. That James Brown listening neighbor brutally murdered his girlfriend that night, dismembered parts of her and dragged the rest of her body near the train tracks, which was directly behind our apartment.
Excuse?
It hit
Excuse?
me
What?
the
That
cold,
came out of nowhere.
primal and wide-eyed look that I had seen in that man was that of a person who just took another
That
human
came out
being's
of
life
absolutely
in
nowhere.
such a vicious and disgusting way.
Which is bleh,
I
what?
felt so sad for this woman who didn't deserve to go like that. She was
I
always
just
quiet,
was not expecting
sweet,
that.
and seemed a bit down on her luck, usually
Oh,
asking
no.
for cigarettes when I encountered her. And to this day, my stomach still turns thinking about how close I was to death, quite literally, and how
That
he
was
could have
nuts.
ambushed me out of insanity since he was just waiting in the darkness when I walked up. Basically, to all of you who follow their intuition and gut feeling, listen to it. If you have a bad feeling about someone, even if they seem harmless, stay a safe distance the hell away from them. I moved into a different apartment right after because it was just too much thinking about what had happened.
I just was
That
not.
neighbor went to jail and I saw his booking photo. So damn scary to see him again. And I just hope that he's staying in jail, where he belongs.
Definitely not what I was expecting. Okay, that was actually the last story, I believe. Yeah. So we'll listen to a different one now. I can't remember which one we were gonna listen to. Was it the bar stories? Yeah, crazy roommates, sports events, and creepy strangers. I think this was the other one we were gonna listen to the other day, so we can listen to this one. But let me go through chat, because I missed some chat. Some chats. Weather changes every 10 minutes here, so this beautiful weather probably won't last. Oh no. See, Canada's is kind of like every day of the week is something different, but every 10 minutes would drive me nuts. Also, J-Master, you're going to be lurking and sketching. Let's go. Sounds good. I'm making a male Miku Jedi cosplay. That sounds fire. I want to... So, for Fan Expo, I'm still trying to think about what cosplays I want to do for Fan Expo. But I've definitely settled on doing a Miku cosplay. But I'm specifically going to be Baby No Money cosplayed as Miku. I don't know if you guys know who Baby No Money is. But he did a Miku cosplay, so I'm specifically going to be his version of Miku. And that's going to be my Miku cosplay for Fan Expo. But yours sounds like it will be really cool and a lot of fun. Dude was frustrated building his The IKEA furniture names from IKEA. He resorted to stabby stab. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, oh, he's moving around furniture and then just killed his girlfriend. Like, what? That's insane. That's nuts. I was not expecting that. No, I wasn't ready for that. It's been 1 whole hour so far. Yeah, I can't even believe that. I love that so many people are drawing with me. It makes me feel like we have like an art club going on. Which I love. Makes me feel special. But yeah, I think we will listen to this one. It has a different picture, so we don't have to see that creepy picture anymore.
At Newborn Screening Ontario.
Okay.
Get poke.
Okay. I think that the story, or the stories should be starting now. There were some ads that I skipped.
I've been playing country music for almost 40 years now. In bars and honky-tonks.
The after-school art club where we're not stuck being awkward. No, exactly. We all get along. We're all chill.
Second is people. And part of the fun of playing music is getting to meet some of the folks who appreciate it so much.
This is my favorite art club.
After all, their hard-earned dollars keep gas in our tanks, food in our bellies, and strings on our guitars. So I figured the least I can do is accept a beer or two when they offer to buy and let them tell me all about
It's really hard for me
Hank
to
song.
see the difference between these
and every
colors.
So often, you meet a truly
It's
great
very
American,
difficult.
And there's some folks out there I'll remember for the rest of my
The
life.
regular show intro,
But
it
then
sounded like
sometimes
that
you
a
meet
little
someone
bit.
who makes
Or
you
like
glad to be
Stranger
leaving town the
Things.
next morning. We were in a college
very
town
strange.
called Brookings up in South Dakota. Nice place, and for the most part, nice people too. We played for 3.5 hours at a joint.
This one
called
doesn't
the
have
Wild
rain
Hare.
ambiance, I'm
They
noticing.
had a good bar
so
and a good crowd and served
unfortunate
alcohol
to
until 2
that.
in the morning. So after the show, we pulled up a stool, ordered some bar food, and then nursed a few beers with the locals until closing time, selling CDs and shirts and whatever else we could
Okay, the
hawk
eye
to 'em.
whites are done. I'll just
But
do
it
the
wasn't
eye
just about
details
making a
at this
few
point
extra
too.
bucks. You shake a guy's hand after playing his favorite song, and he's twice as likely to come back and see you the next time you're in town. Anyway, about 1:30 in the morning, most of the bar's patrons were steadily making their departure, and even some of the band had called it a night and headed back to the bus. In the end, it was just me sat on a bar stool and our drummer, Larry, trying to convince people to play a round of pool with him. I was getting ready to head out when some old-timer slumps down in the stool next to me and starts telling me how we played a damn good show. I told him I
That's cool.
appreciate it. And then we got to talking
But I have
about
a feeling
music
something
and
bad's
what it's
gonna
like touring
happen.
the country and living on the road. I remember how after ordering us the last couple of beers, the stranger asked me if we ever broke down. Like,
Try
out
adding
in
that
the middle of
mascara.
nowhere.
Should help
I
differentiating.
told
Yeah,
him,
like
sure,
the
once or twice, but
melting
sleeping at a truck stop
mascara.
could sometimes be way
Let's see
scarier
what
than
I can
sleeping
do
on
to
some
get
dirt
that
road
working.
outside of Nowheresville, USA. He then asked if we carried any protection on the bus with us, and by protection, I don't mean the kind you keep in your wallet. I told him our driver, who doubled as security on an informal basis, was usually packing a pistol of some kind, and that, sure, there was occasionally a gun or two on the bus depending on
I
where
think
we
that
were
looks
and
pretty
who
okay.
was touring with us.
I don't want to
I made
overdo
a joke
it,
about
so
how I hoped he wasn't an ATF agent, and the guy laughed before swearing on his mama that he wasn't no Fed. He then asked if our driver had ever had to use his pistol. I told him we'd been in some sticky situations and had some real close calls, but that by the grace of God, I'd never seen anyone shot. He then started telling me how not only
There we
had he
go.
once been forced to defend his life and property, but he'd taken the lives of 3 men who tried to kill him. I asked if he was a veteran, because he looked
people
about the
keeping
age to have
condoms in
served
their
in
wallet is a
Korea
new
or
concept for
maybe
me.
World
I think
War
that
II,
that's
but
that's
he shook
something
his
that I've
head.
seen in like movies and
served a day
TV
in his
shows a
life.
lot.
It had been a home invasion, and according to him,
It seems to be some
it was
kind
the
of
most
like
significant event of his
cliche or
entire
something.
life. The old-timer said that he lived in a big house that he'd bought many years before to house his wife and 5 children. But after a car accident claimed her and their 2 daughters, and his sons grew up and moved elsewhere, he was left all alone. That kind of lifestyle suited the old-timer for a while, but then crystal meth got a hold of a lot
People
of
have
the
been doing
folks
that for
around their
decades, just
county,
not
and
often.
everything
Yeah, it's
changed.
like I've seen it in a lot of
Theft and
TV
violent
shows
crime
and
went
stuff.
through the roof, and once all the gas stations, liquor stores, and credit unions had been hit, the tweakers started targeting people in their homes. The first time the old-timer was robbed, the tweakers took one of his air conditioning units while he was at work.
What?
They must have figured that it was just him living there
Taking
alone,
an air
because
conditioning
they
unit
start
is kind of
targeting
nuts.
the guy's house at least once, sometimes twice a week. He takes to staying up on his porch with a pot of coffee and a shotgun, just waiting for them to show up. Depriving himself of sleep like that damn near made him sick, but one night, he sees lights at the end of his driveway.
I'm gonna do pink
Minutes
for
later,
the shadows
two
for
tweakers
white.
are sneaking up the path, then, just as they come close enough, he
That's
fires
too
off
bright.
a warning shot over their heads.
I just want a subtle
But then,
pink for
Instead of
shadows.
just taking off like scared jackrabbits, the tweakers start shooting back as they run off. The old-timer ducks for cover as bullets come flying at him.
Oh
and
yes,
the last
this
thing
is on
he
a
hears
different
before
layer.
the tweakers drive off is, "We'll be back, you dumb son of a bitch. And when we do, we're gonna kill you." And the old-timer
Oh,
goes
that's
to
not
talk
good.
to the town sheriff, who tells him that while he'd every right to use lethal force to defend himself against deadly threats, it might not be such a good idea if he was outnumbered and outgunned by a bunch of jacked-up tweakers. And under any other circumstances, the sheriff might have placed two of his boys on a nearby highway to act as a kind of quick reaction force. But given the recent meth-fueled crime wave, he didn't have the bodies to spare.
I
And
think
the
that's
old-timer
pretty
said
good.
the sheriff told
Mint
him
has
how,
like
on
very
this
cute,
occasion,
like blushy
it might be best that he
cheeks.
made himself scarce for a few days once he made
So
sure
I'm
that he
gonna
was up to date
do
on his home insurance payments.
Maybe
He was
something
entitled
like
to stand his
this.
ground and put up a fight, but he had to ask himself, was that old empty house worth dying for?
Yeah, that's good.
And that old-timer said that he told the sheriff that he was right, and
I like
that
using
he
a light
had out
blue
of
to
town
shade
for a
white.
few
Yeah,
days
like
before
I
returning
don't
home,
usually use
picking
gray.
through whatever
It's
was
either
left
blue
and
or pink
spiking
is
a
what I
for
use to
sale
shade
sign
white
in the
because it
front
makes
yard.
it look a
He
little
even stopped
more
by the sheriff's
like
department to
stand
let him know
out,
that
I
he was
guess.
heading out, but not
That
before
makes
making a few
sense.
arrangements and tending to a few pieces of unfinished business. A few days later, this guy rolls back into town to find bullet holes all over the
Okay,
rear
I guess
doors
I'll
of a
shade
moving
this
truck
now.
that he'd rented before heading out of town. The house was fine. Everything was in
This stuff
place,
is
but
hard for me to shade
someone
because I
appeared to
really have a hard
shot up
time
the moving
seeing
truck. This guy's checking things out and sees
These
someone
colors.
tried to break into the cab, but after opening up the back of the truck, he finds 3 dead bodies. A short while after,
okay.
the sheriff arrives, and this guy said everyone was almost gagging from how bad the smell was inside the truck. But he also said that it didn't take long to figure out why the inside smelled so bad. Before shooting and stabbing the hell out of each other, 3 local tweakers had decided to use the rear storage of the truck as a bathroom.
Oh,
Then at first
okay.
glance, after relieving themselves, the tweakers closed the truck's door, then proceeded to cut each other up and blow each other away.
What?
The sheriff said that he'd never seen anything like it. But then again, all kinds of weird things have been happening since meth took over the narcotics scene. The old-timer said that once the scene was all
All
cleaned
kinds
up,
of
the
weird
sheriff told
stuff
him that
has been
those tweakers
happening
had
since
accidentally
meth.
locked themselves
True.
in the back of the moving truck, because by the looks of things,
Very
the
true.
lock had malfunctioned and couldn't be opened from the
Oh
inside.
god.
According to the sheriff, if it wasn't for the triple murder, the truck company might be liable for damages. But then, the company might well have proof of maintenance, as they often
this
do,
is
meaning they could prove the malfunction was down to a
Hard
consumer
for me
fault.
to see,
And the old-timer said the
guys.
sheriff then asked
Oh
him,
no.
real plain,
I'm trying my
if he
best.
had anything to do with that lock not working.
I'm sure you guys can see
He
this
said
completely
no.
fine, but I
So that
cannot.
was just about the end of it. Only that wasn't strictly true about the old-timer not doing any lock tinkering. And not only had he heavily tampered with the truck's lock, but he'd never even left town in the first place. The old-timer told me that he'd rented the most secure hauling truck possible, one that was almost impossible to break into from either inside or outside. He then tinkered with the interior lock, tested it out on an unwitting friend of his to make sure it wasn't functional from the inside, then got busy with the next stage of his plan, making the back of that truck look like it was loaded up with electronics. He used all the old TV, radio, and VHS boxes that he kept up in the attic, stuffed them full of junk to make them feel fuller, then left the rear doors to the truck wide open like it was bait. And the next night, Those tweakers show up just like they'd promised, 3 of them, all armed to the teeth. And they showed up to get revenge for that old-timer having fired that warning shot, which I'm guessing they thought was just a missed shot and not a warning. But upon seeing that big old moving truck with what looked like thousands of dollars worth of appliances in it, well, they just couldn't resist. All 3 climbed inside, looked through all the boxes, and hollering like they just won the state lottery. Then, out comes you-know-who from his hiding place to slam the truck's rear doors shut, locking them inside. First, the tweakers were spooked, what with the doors just slamming closed on them like they did, then they got frustrated when the interior door handle wouldn't function, each of them saying something like, "Here, let me try," and then cussing the thing out when it wouldn't budge. It took them a while to realize that they were trapped in the back of that old moving truck, but once they did, they started to panic. The old-timer said they tried shooting the lockout, and when that didn't work, they tried shooting holes in the doors and then hoped their boots might be able to do the rest. He said they spent hours trying everything they could think of to get themselves out of that truck, but it was no good.
This old man is just telling this poor band
old-timer
player.
and his
Yeah,
buddy
he's
had
just
tested
telling
out
him
just
this
about
story
everything,
for
with
absolutely
the
no
buddy being none
reason.
the wiser, of course, until the old-timer was happy that the truck was inescapable. At least without any serious industrial equipment, and unless they just up and stole it, no meth heads are out there driving with industrial-strength cutting equipment. It took those fools hours and hours before they figured out that they were trapped, and when they did, they started calling for help. And then, and only then, did the old-timer call out to them and tell them exactly what had happened to them. He said they were furious and tried firing shots in his direction through the side of the truck, but as his presence there before me that night confirmed, those shots flew wildly astray, and he told those foolish sons of bitches exactly how he tricked them into walking into their own tomb. And he says it was only when he used that word tomb that it really dawned on them what was happening. He said they begged and pleaded, swearing they wouldn't hurt him if he'd only let him out. The whole thing had been a big old misunderstanding, they said. Some people were not to be messed with. They just didn't know that he was one of them. They went from promising not to hurt him to promising him hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of dollars as a reward.
I don't think these people have that kind of money, considering they were stealing stuff from a truck. Like, I don't.
For them, it was way beyond forgiveness. See, most people would have trapped those tweakers in that truck, called the sheriff, and then laughed their asses off while the deputies dragged them out of the back in cuffs. But
this guy's different. This guy's nuts, apparently.
He let those tweakers sweat it out in that truck with no food or water for 3 whole days.
Oh my god.
By then, they were drinking their own pee.
What, again with the pee? Like, what? That's last time we listened to a story
After
with
that, he didn't
pee.
think
I don't know what's
before they
happening.
turned on
I
each other, and
don't
when
want
they
to
did,
hear about
they went off
pee
like
in
the
these
4th of
scary
July in there.
stories.
I'm not saying that those boys didn't get what
That's
they
where I
deserved.
draw the line,
They
guys.
showed us something poetic about them getting stuck in a kind of man-sized rat trap. But what really sent a chill through me was how proud that old-timer was of himself, and how he laughed until he wheezed thinking about them begging for help. He said that they were praying, crying for their mamas, and he was grinning like a madman telling me the things that he'd say to them. He used to talk about them eating each other, wondering who was going to draw the short straw. He did his best to make sure that they went slowly crazy without any food or water until they finally snapped.
Yeah, this
As I
guy's
mentioned
nuts.
already, I'm not saying those tweakers didn't get what was coming to them, but it was the way that old-timer was describing the whole thing, how he was proud as a peacock for what he did.
Yeah.
That's what I found so chilling. If he wanted to deal with them to a permanent end, he could have shot the truck full of holes or set it on fire or driven the thing into a goddamn lake.
Jesus.
But he let those boys starve and dehydrate and slowly lose their goddamn minds until the thought of eating each other drove them over the edge. At first, that old-timer had seemed like a good man, and I guess he was in so many ways. But to think that he had that kind of cruelty in him, that kind of darkness, I'm not ashamed to say that it terrified me. I also know that if those tweakers had gotten their hands on that guy, they would have done equally terrible things to him.
So what, the lesson is nobody's good in this world? Like, what is this?
I didn't expect that guy to have ever done something like that, and certainly not to find it all so hilarious neither. I mean, he laughed himself into a coughing
Oh,
fit
actually,
after
wait,
he
I need to
mimicked
make
one of
sure
the
it's
tweakers
this.
wailing, "Mama,
Yeah.
Mama, I'm so sorry." And I shuddered just imagining it. Again, I'm not saying that that guy didn't do the right thing. I'm just saying I think he went about it in a completely wrong way and lost a piece of his soul in the process.
Yeah, that was not fun. Okay, we're almost done shading all of this. I think I just have to... I just have to shade the cup, the hand,
I was a real
this
idiot when I was
hand,
younger.
and the bells.
I got hooked on Oxycontin, got in trouble with the cops, then ended up faced with two choices. Either go to jail or take part in a state-mandated rehab program called The Farm. The Farm was, unsurprisingly, a farm, and I'm guessing its owner had friends in high places because he managed to wrangle himself a deal whereby he could get himself all the dirt-cheap labor he needed so long as they were all troubled youths facing jail time. I guess that sounds real exploitative or whatever, but looking back on it, I'm not sure it was the farmer who benefited more. I guess I can't speak for the other kids, but working in that place sure as hell saved my ass. And sometimes I think it just might have been a stroke of genius sending us to that place, because picking up trash on the side of the highway is one thing, but seeing how putting time and love into something really can create something beautiful, it fixed a part of my brain I didn't know needed fixing. I made friends at the farm that I still talk to. Granted, it's on Facebook because we live at opposite ends of the country now, but the point still stands. It gave me discipline and self-belief.
I don't really know
is
where
amazing
this
considering I showed up expecting
story
it
is
to be nothing
going.
but baby jail. But then, I guess it's the irony of ironies that all of the crazy stuff I did on the street, it all kind of pales in comparison to something I went through at the farm. So when
All
you
right,
first
here
got
we
to
go.
the farm, you were
Yeah, it
assigned
sounds
a job
sketchy
and a
already.
roommate.
Immediately,
Your
I
job
was
could be
like,
anything
okay,
from
this is gonna be
livestock and crop
messed.
management to irrigation or pest control. But your roommate was there for one purpose alone, to help break you into the routine and make sure you stayed on track. These roommates were ideal for the role because the system was working for them and they could talk from the heart about how it could work for the newbies too. And that's how it worked with my mentor anyway, and when it came time, I gladly accepted the role myself. I knew it'd be a challenge, and I'm sure I myself was a challenge when I first arrived. But I also knew that I had to give something back before I left the program and moved on with my life. Not everyone made it to mentorship level, and as cheesy as it might sound, I considered it an honor and a privilege. For the first time in my life, I felt truly appreciated and wanted to share my own appreciation in return. So around 9 months into the program, I'd risen to the position
Mentor,
of
bad
livestock
word.
supervisor.
Yeah, it's
and
a
been given
there's
my own
too many red
two-bedroom
flags to
living
count
quarters
right
in
now listening
preparation
to
for
this.
receiving my mentee. Obviously, the dorms were very strictly divided by gender,
Oh,
so
I didn't
knew
do
my mentee
the
was
glove.
going to be female.
I did one
But
glove.
what I didn't know, and had no way of knowing until I met her, was how cooperative she was going to be. If she was chilled out, repentant, and receptive, then the next month would be an absolute breeze for me. But then if she wasn't, I knew things could get very rough. I'd already heard a bunch of horror stories and how troublesome uncooperative mentees could be when the rubber really hit the road, and in 1 or 2 classes, fights had broken out between the mentors and their roommates. I really didn't want that to happen, so my whole game plan focused on pacification and building a rapport between myself and my mentee. Pretty much the exact same tactic my own mentor took back when I first arrived at the farm. So, the day my mentee was due to arrive, I was actually really excited to meet her, and I wasn't in the least bit discouraged by her attitude upon arrival. Now, she obviously didn't want to be there, but very few did upon first touching down, so I understood her reticence and took it in my stride. Since I was still in livestock, she accompanied me on a few days' work with the animals after her induction was finished. And although she really didn't take to it at first, she warmed up with time and showed rapid improvement. She was due to be with me for a month, and the month could have either been very short or very long, and by about week 2,
Of course, I have to
it was
shade
looking
the
like it was going to be the
drink.
short kind.
I've
Shauna,
decided
my
to make this a
mentee, was
caramel
fitting
ribbon
in
crunch
well, and
frap.
although her attitude
So I'm
needed
gonna
major
add
work
caramel
sometimes,
pieces to it as
we
well.
were making some major breakthroughs together. And then came the day that the cops arrived, 2 of them, and I spotted them talking to a very concerned-looking group leader. I walked over, mainly intent on listening in on what they were saying, but when the group leader spotted me, she called me over to talk. I found out the cops had driven all the way out from the city because they were looking for someone, and that someone just so happened to be my mentee, Shauna. They didn't just want to talk to her either. She had a warrant out for her in another county.
Oh.
They were there to arrest her.
Oh.
Obviously, this kind of presented us with a very precarious situation because we didn't know how Shauna was going to react to all this. She could potentially be going back to jail for whatever she'd done, so if she saw the cops coming, she might just try and run. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, and she's been so volatile.
Then there was the day the cops arrived. Oh, okay then, yeah.
But then, as we were thinking about it, I had an idea. If I could go and talk to her first and break the bad news, it might be received better coming from me instead of cops.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I remember how when I was
That might
on
be a
Oxys,
mistake.
just the sight of a cop would give me major anxiety.
Oh, no,
And I
that's
don't
a
know,
mistake.
Maybe in another life I'd have made a run for it too. And all that progress, all that hope so suddenly and cruelly being taken away. It was a nightmare, but one that was about to be Shauna's reality in the next couple of minutes, unless I was there to soften the blow.
No, I think this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea,
to where I
sir
was
or
pretty sure
ma'am.
Shauna was just kind of chilling in her room. She was right where I expected her to be when I walked in, and I sat down in the bed opposite her and told her how we needed to talk. I think she genuinely had no idea that that other warrant was out for her because when I dropped the news, she was devastated. To say it was emotional would be the understatement of the century, and she actually did bring up the idea of just running off before the cops could see where she went. But then somehow, I managed to talk her into just going with the cops to see what the warrant was about because it was better to face the music than run from it and make things worse. The thing that really seemed to convince her was when I asked her if she was 100% truly certain that she didn't know what the warrant was about. Then when she gave me yet another convincing no, I told her that it couldn't have been that serious. She remembered robbing a liquor store
I'm assuming
or
this
shooting
person's
someone, but if she
lying.
seriously didn't remember and wasn't blackout drunk when it happened, then it couldn't have been any worse than a missed court date or a traffic violation. Shauna calmed down a little like, damn, you're right. And after promising that the group leaders would put in a good word for her so that she might be able to come back, she agreed to follow me over to where the cops were waiting. I remember how we were walking side by side after we left the dorms. But when we turned the corner of the community hub and the cops came into view, Shauna slipped from my side and started to drop back just a little. It was obviously just a little hesitancy on her part, but
Are you
I figured
sure?
we were over
I
that
feel
and
like
kept
it's
encouraging her. But when I looked
a
back
red
in her direction after she
flag.
totally slipped from me, I didn't notice that she was reaching for something. But she must have been because I looked back towards the cops and the next thing I know, there's a knife at my throat.
See,
I
you
just
shouldn't
froze
have
for a
went.
few
I don't know
seconds.
why this person
And
went.
feeling the knife to my throat
That's
was one
like
thing, but realizing it was Shauna
mistake
that was
number
holding
one.
it
What
was
are we doing?
another thing entirely. I was completely blindsided, and all I could do was just stand there as Shauna held my head with one hand and the knife with the other, as cops drew their weapons and started to approach.
Okay, I think it's time to do a
Shauna
background,
started
by the way.
telling me to walk backwards,
This
which
looks
I
pretty
did,
good.
but I think the movement kind of kicked my brain into life because the words, "What are you doing?" just started tumbling out of my mouth.
Yeah,
I said
think
stuff
it's
like, "Shauna,
background
what
time.
are you doing? Shauna, think about what you're doing." And she responds, "I know what I'm doing. I'm not going
I'll
to
just
jail.
bring Steve
I'm
Le
getting out of here."
Poisson back. No.
All the while, the cops are screaming to put the knife down, put the knife down. But all Shauna seemed focused on was walking backwards and not cutting my throat on accident. I remember telling her, "They're going to shoot you, Shauna. They're going to kill you if you don't stop." And she just yelled at me to shut up and keep walking, which again is what I did. Kids had come running to see
I
what
didn't
was
do
going
my
on
thick
because they
outline
could
on the
hear all
whole thing.
yelling.
Let me do that first,
So as we're
actually.
walking backwards, almost hip to hip, there's this big gathering of kids all watching from near
Almost
the community
forgot.
hub. And it was chaos. But I never once believed Shauna would ever do me any harm. It was just a desperate attempt to avoid going to jail, and as soon as she got to the trees over near the livestock fields, she was going to make a run for it. But that's not what happened. There was about a minute where I was trying to convince her to let me go, but Shauna was too busy trying to get the cops to keep their distance. She was yelling at them to stay back and all this other stuff and totally ignoring anything that I had to say to her. But then there was this moment when she stopped.
No, I'm not going to do that to
the tail. It was like she came
I almost
back
started.
to me for a second. At first, she told me to shut up again, but I kept telling her how what she was doing wouldn't work. If the cops didn't catch her on foot, she'd end up running from them on her own in a place where she was unfamiliar with. If she stuck to the roads, she'd be in cuffs within hours. But if she stuck to the woods, it'd be her versus the bears and cougars and Mother Nature. And I told her again, this won't work, Shauna. And in reply, she told me, yes, it will, because they'll be too busy trying to save you than to chase me. I could write all night, I guess, and still not even get close to how terrified those words made me feel. And like I said, I was 99.999% convinced that Shauna meant me zero harm, and had just panicked when she realized she was going to jail. But maybe
Girlie has a knife to your throat. What do you mean she meant me zero harm?
Who knows? Not like she's around to ask her either. And the last thing she yelled as she intended to draw the blade of that knife across my throat was, I'm sorry. But she didn't just say it, she yelled it. And I guess that was all the cops needed to hear. She yelled that apology, and I felt the blood hit my face. But it wasn't mine. It was Shauna. After one of the cops heard her cry, took aim and pulled the trigger.
Oh my god.
I had a tiny cut where the knife nicked me as she fell, but other than that, I was completely unharmed. Shauna, on the other hand, was probably dead before she even hit the dirt.
What, like...
The cop put the bullet right through her brainstem, and there was a hole in her face between her nose and her eye. I just started screaming. Like I didn't know if I had been shot, how bad the cut to my throat was, because, like I said, it was bleeding a little and I was in a state of complete hysteria. I got down on my knees and started trying to wake Shauna up, like shaking her. I thought that there'd be a chance that she'd survive the shot. I mean, people survive crazy head wounds sometimes. But I think I just knew, maybe from the look in her eyes, that there was no more life inside her anymore. That day was the worst of my entire life. It's not something I'll ever get over either. I've just learned to live with it. I know Shauna had to die so that I might live, and I heard the sureness in her voice, and I know in my heart that she might have been about to kill me. But that doesn't mean that every single day I don't think about her and wish that she'd made a different choice.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's crazy. Yeah, I feel bad for that person too. This is an ad.
Should be something. Not take that need. Ash Reed was in the 10th
like
grade.
I always say, let's read, get that coin, but I'm not gonna listen to the ad.
I remember when I was a kid, I would watch and even attend some football games with my dad, and it was something that we bonded over. When he passed away when I was in the 10th grade, I stopped watching football though. It just didn't appeal to me like it did when I would watch it with my father. And a few years ago, I fell in love with the game all over again. Now for some context, I was 27 years old when I started following football again.
Football scary stories,
with one of my best
go.
friends and his wife, and Sunday nights became a tradition at his house. Good food, good friends, good times. Falling in love with the game again started to bring back so many fond memories that I had with my dad. I know a lot of people out there may not enjoy sports, especially American football, but sometimes the memories you can make can go far beyond the game itself. However, the memories are not always good. And this story that I'm about to tell you happened last year, and instead of a fond memory, I was left with a very lasting nightmare.
Uh-oh.
As I mentioned a moment ago, I got
like
back
I
into
knew that
football
was
a
going to
few years
be
back,
the
but
plot,
I wasn't
obviously,
able to
but
attend
like
the game until
what?
last year. My buddy surprised me on my birthday with tickets to an NFL game, and
I have no
was
idea how
beyond
this
pumped.
is going to go. Like,
This was going
we're
to be
gonna
the
go
first
from
game
football
I
to
attended
horror.
since before 10th grade. My town unfortunately doesn't have an NFL team, and the closest stadium is almost 3 hours away. I didn't want to drive all the way home after the game, so I decided to actually book an Airbnb close to the stadium.
Okay, I see where this is going now. I did.
The game with me, and he
As
was
soon
bringing
as
his
they
wife
said
as well.
Airbnb, I was like, oh,
They didn't
yeah,
want to stay after
okay.
the game, so they planned on driving home after. And this was honestly fine with me. I was actually looking forward to the quiet evening to myself. The game was awesome, other than one minor hiccup towards the end, and the score was tied in the fourth quarter, and our team actually had the ball. And a crazy series of plays transpired, and as you might expect, the crowd was going insane. So insane that someone actually bumped into me and caused me to spill some of my beer onto the gentleman in front of me. And he wasn't pleased. And I apologized, but he continued to lay out this very verbal assault.
Dude, it was an accident. That happens at, like, stadiums and concerts all the time.
As did I.
Sorry?
Not long after the game ended and our team came out victorious, and we cheered and celebrated with the rest of the home team fans. I won't say what the team was for my anonymity. And that night, I got back to my Airbnb and just kind of hung out and relaxed. I decided to order myself a pizza and just sort of enjoy my little scenic getaway. The place was very cozy and on the outskirts of that town, and it wasn't like in the middle of nowhere or anything like that, but it definitely felt kind of secluded. I'm not exactly sure what time I fell asleep, but
Airbnbs always make me, like,
midnight for sure.
unsettled,
at some
to
point
be honest.
during the night, I woke up because I thought that I could hear this very strange noise. I sat in bed for a minute trying to focus, and I didn't know if it was just my imagination or if I actually had heard something. A few seconds later, I heard it again, and then again right after. This wasn't creaking floorboards or any of the other things that people say when they think you're being paranoid. This was, without a doubt, the sound of something being thrown at the side of the house. Something small, almost like a rock or a
The
pebble.
Airbnb is owned by the insane guy. Well, the insane guy obviously is coming back in the story.
Also because I didn't know the layout of the house and I didn't want to stumble my way through the darkness. I'm a bit clumsy and I have a knack for breaking things, and I made my way to the window that was on the other side of the house. And that's where I had heard the sound coming from. I cupped my hands and looked into the darkness, but I didn't see anything. And I was convinced that whatever I had heard was probably nothing. And being the anxious person that I am, I just decided to go investigate outside. I understand this may seem like the worst idea in the world looking back, but I had convinced myself that nothing was out there except maybe some wildlife, and I just wanted to make sure. I spent a few minutes outside, walking around, having a smoke, and I didn't see anything weird or out of the ordinary. I did see a few small rocks on the side of the house where I had thought I had heard the sound, but it was a pretty wooded area, and those small rocks could have just been there the entire time. I decided to chalk up this entire ordeal to just my anxiety and nerves and being away from home. I started making my way back to the house, and that's when I froze. Because I had turned a lot of the lights on.
Imagine, like, someone accidentally spilling a drink on you, and then you show up at their Airbnb.
Walking through the kitchen,
like,
was a person. Someone who was wearing a hood.
I don't know if it's the same guy at this point, but I'm assuming it will
I
be.
immediately took cover behind a tree, ducking down. Thankfully, I had my cell phone with me, and immediately I called 911. While I waited for the cops to show up, I just sort of watched this figure through the windows slowly creeping through the house. He seemed to be opening doors and even checking closets. I had my small duffel bag on a little table in the kitchen, and this person went through my bag. He even grabbed my wallet and went through it a bit, but didn't even take anything. After a couple of minutes, this person started to move a little faster. He was whipping open doors, and he looked like he was looking for something, and he looked frustrated. He must have heard the police, because as soon as the cop car showed up, he jumps out a window and starts to flee into the dark.
Jumps out a window! Oh,
I
no.
came out from behind the tree and flagged down a cop and tried telling him that the intruder had just ran, but they were very focused on calming me down in that moment. Finally, the police were able to take my statement, but by that time, this intruder was long gone. To my knowledge, they never caught this person, and nobody knew what he was doing or who he was looking for. The owners of the house were alerted by the authorities, and they claimed that they had no idea why anyone would do that, and I believe them. I remember telling my buddy the story that next morning.
Okay,
and
so I
he
guess it
believed that
wasn't
might
the
have
guy
actually
with the
been
beer,
that
but, like-
disgruntled fan from the football game.
Oh, so he
the one
thought
that I spilled beer on.
his friend thinks that
I
that's
think
what
it would
happened.
be outrageous and borderline improbable for an intruder to have followed me all the way home, but the more I thought about it, this person did fit the profile of that crazy fan. He was even wearing the same color as the team, but that might have been common for the area as well. And this all could have easily been a coincidence, but I don't know. It really made me think. And it's really scary that sometimes people out there can just do things like this, and we truly will never know why.
It's very possible it could have been that guy. That's where I thought the story was gonna go too, so.
I used to live on Parkfield Road near Lark Lane in Liverpool. My local supermarket was the Tesco on Agberth Road, so every time I
Oh, well,
needed to buy
thank you,
food,
Bacon.
I'd walk
I
all
think the
the way down
background's turning out
Parkfield
nice
from my
too. It's
flat,
very
which was
reminiscent
in a
of
house
this
at the very
character.
top of the road near Prince's Park.
I think I'm almost
Most
done.
of the
I'm probably
houses
just
on
gonna add a
Parkfield are
heart
basically
here and
old
probably
Georgian
here.
mansions. I'm talking beautiful old buildings with long drives and grand entranceways that I'm guessing used to be occupied by the city's elite.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
But
everybody.
nowadays, most have been converted into apartments which have 5 to 7 flats in them. Some of them boast some truly exquisite architecture.
Also,
but
yeah, Facade, it's
while they're
almost
nice to
time for you to
glance
go
at,
to work.
It's generally not good form to stop and stare at someone's house.
It's almost
or
time
place
for
of
me
work.
to end stream
So
too.
I
I
just
got
minded my
about
own business and kept on walking past.
20-ish more
But
minutes
that's not
until
to
I
say
gotta
that I didn't notice
skedaddle.
that one or
Oh,
two
that's
of
not
the
gonna
old
work. I
mansions
guess
had
that
been
heart's just
converted
gonna
into
be
stuff
there.
that wasn't apartments. I knew one had been converted into a nursery and another was like a vet's or something, but I was never curious to find out anything more about them. So one morning, I leave for work at 7 a.m., so I'm walking down Parkfield, still half asleep, earbuds in, podcast on, and some coffee in hand. And I was about halfway down the road, headed for St. Michael's train station, when I saw a guy standing still on the pavement in front of me. It looked like he was waiting for someone, maybe a taxi or a car share to work or something, but other than very briefly regarding him, I didn't pay much attention
See
to
you,
him at all.
Facade. Have a
And
good
that all
day
changed,
at
though, when
work.
I walked past him.
Thank you for coming and
he said
hanging
something
out.
that
I
couldn't make
appreciate
out
it a
over the
lot.
voice of my podcast. I was almost certain that it was directed at me, so I stopped and pulled out my earbuds and then asked who he was talking to. He was looking right at me as I
I feel like
turned,
I need
so
one here
clearly
now.
he was talking to me. But he didn't answer my question or anything. He just kept on talking, even though I hadn't heard the first thing he'd said. I remember exactly what he said because it was one of the weirdest things anyone's ever said to me in my
Yeah,
entire
I
life.
think this is pretty
He
good.
goes, "They're all burning.
I think this is pretty
In one
good.
big pile, and every day, there's more and more." It probably took my half-asleep brain a microsecond
Also, thank you,
longer than it
Bones. I'm
normally
so
would,
happy
but
that you
as
like
soon
it.
as
I literally
realized
am
the
just
fellow was
finishing it.
chatting nonsense,
I'm gonna
I
like
said,
sign it now.
"Yep, okay," in like a sort of please don't kill me crazy person kind of way, and then carried on walking towards the train station.
Where do
I
I even
suppose
want
if
to
you live
sign
in any
this?
city on the planet, you're just
I'll sign
bound
it
to
here.
encounter a few head cases from time to time. I just didn't expect to encounter one that early in the morning. It didn't scare me or anything, I just thought, what a weird bloke, and then by the time I got to the office and saw the massive stack of invoices that I had to work through, it was basically forgotten about for the next 8 hours until it came time to commute home again. The fellow wasn't there that time, nor
Yay,
was he there
it is
any other
finished.
time I walked down
That's a
Parkfield Road
record
the
for
next 2
how
months.
like fast it's
But then
taken me to
one
finish a
morning,
piece
bright and
on
early,
stream.
there
I
he was
feel.
again in the exact same spot I'd seen him the first time, and he wasn't
Usually
alone.
it takes me a
The fellow
very,
was standing with
very
2
long
women, both in
time.
their 50s or 60s, who both appeared to be reading. Since there was 3 of them on the pavement,
Okay.
I decided
We
to
could
cross
probably
over onto the other side so
start
I'd have more room
sketching
to pass.
Deletos.
But as I did, I couldn't help but peek over at the 3 of them. The fella caught me looking, and although he didn't say anything, we locked eyes and smiled before I quickly turned my head away. But before I did, I noticed the 2 women, who looked like they were reading from little books, appeared to be whispering something too, like they were reading aloud. Now this is the point where a lot of your American listeners are going to stop and think, hang on, this sounds familiar. And to be fair, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, then you're thinking the right things. But the issue in question isn't such a massive deal over here as it is over on your side of the pond. I'm not trying to turn it into a dunk on you or anything. We just have different issues over here. Cue the overwhelming and unflattering agreement. And that's why I could walk past them a second time and not piece together what they were doing
desktop, but that's
with where
weird.
they were choosing to do it. I blame it on the sleepy brain.
I'm going to my
personally.
art reference
Both times I
board
saw
for
the
reference
weird fella, I'd
pictures
only
right
been
now,
awake
but I
30
don't know
minutes,
why
and
it
since I was on my way to work,
came
I
up like that.
didn't exactly have
Okay,
time
so
to stop
today
and
when I
chat.
open Pinterest, the first thing
It
that
was
comes up
literally
is
days
Miku
later when I
smoking out of a
realized
bong,
that
so
we were
that's
standing
fire, I
outside of the bar,
suppose. What
facing
the
the
big?
place from across the street, so I decided to employ a bit of the old Google food to try and work out what was going on. It was called something like the Daffodil Clinic. Not its actual name, of course, but something equally unassuming. It then took me mere minutes to figure out what its purpose was. There was a lot of flowery language around the
Baller
subject.
Pinterest. That's
They
my
just didn't
Pinterest
come
like
out and say it on
90%
one
of the
page.
time. It's just random
But after
shit.
just the teeniest bit of clicking around, I discovered what the clinic was for. It wasn't a vet. It was an abortion clinic. And that's why the people were praying outside of it.
Oh.
I've since come to learn that protesting abortion clinics is quite a big thing in the States, and a lot of the time the protests get pretty vicious, I guess. Now, before the comments section erupts, I'd like to make it clear that I'm not trying to cast aspersions on anyone. In a free country, people should be free to pray wherever they want, right? And I don't live there, so I don't really know exactly what's going on. But that's not what I found so creepy about that man. The one who said that initially unintelligible thing to me about
I don't know what kind of pose I
want to
do for
pile.
Delito's character.
He was talking about the aborted babies, and he was talking about them burning in hell. I think you'd have to be exceptionally sturdy of a person for that mental image not to send a shudder through you. It certainly did with
political
me once I
horror
realized
stories.
what
That's
that guy was
worse. Yeah, it
referring
started
to.
with sports.
Sometime
Now it's
after that,
politics.
I
I
heard
don't
about the
know.
fella getting arrested. I'm guessing someone reported him to the police and that he was in the habit of saying things to people as
Not
they
even
walked
brain rot
past.
Pinterest, just
I
actual
don't know what
random
law that's
shit. Yeah,
breaking,
pretty
but
much.
That's just not on, is it? Saying things about babies burning in hell to people going through a horrible period in their lives. Now, I know this can be a controversial topic, but I don't know. If you're gonna pray,
Delito, your
do
character
it
has
quietly across the
heterochromia, right?
street
Like the two
those
different
women. Don't make a big thing
colored
out of it.
eyes, right?
And certainly, don't go telling passing strangers things
It's
about
a little
piles
hard
of
to see in
babies
the one
burning
reference
in hell.
picture, so I just want to double check.
My mom and I moved around a lot when I was a kid. I was born in upstate New York, lived in Connecticut for a while, then after my parents got divorced, my mother and I moved to San Diego to live with her boyfriend, before we eventually moved up to Portland, Oregon to live with my maternal uncle when I was 12. We stayed there till I was 18, and aside
wanna
from
do
one
some
or two
type of,
cons,
like-
there were a lot of pros to growing
Like
up in Portland.
flexing or like
But when I
arms
first moved there,
crossed or
I'd say
something
for
like
a
that.
year or so, I hated it, and it was mostly down to one man. A couple of days after we moved, I was
Yeah, two
riding
different
my
color
bike
eyes.
up and
Okay,
down
cool.
the street when I saw this kid around
They
my
got
age
the
walking up the street.
heterochromia, not to be confused with
He had a plastic grocery
homochromia.
bag
No,
in his hand, and
exactly.
it looked like it was full, but whatever was
I
in
also
it
have
moving.
heterochromia in my
And as
model.
I drew level with him, I stopped my bike and asked what he had in the bag.
But I probably
And he
also have
smiled, walked
homochromia
up to
too.
me, and opened up the bag to show me a bunch of fish that he'd caught that afternoon. I'd never been around much fishing or hunting, so I thought it was wild that this kid was just walking up the street with a bag of fish that he just pulled
I
out
could
of
do
a
that
pond.
pose that I
But
think
to
you're
him,
talking about the
it
one
was like the
where
most normal thing in the world.
he has like one
And
arm
what
up
blew my mind ever more is
and one
when
arm down.
I asked what he was going
That's
to
what
do
I
with them,
got
and he
when I like
replied,
Googled
probably eat him.
stuff.
I thought he was the single
That could
coolest kid
work.
I'd ever met in my life, and it turned out that he lived down the street. So I asked if he'd teach me how to fish. He said sure. Then a few days later, we were on our way down to the old fishing hole that he used to frequent. Brett, my new buddy, used to make his fishing rods out of nothing but sticks, along with whatever hooks and lines he could steal from his dad.
Okay, thank you for
I
sending
thought
me
it was the most badass thing
thank you,
ever.
Delito, for
A
this
kid
reference.
of 14 years old catching his own fish with homemade rods.
I could
and
do a
from then
pose
on,
like that,
I was
honestly, too.
obsessed. And that whole summer, Brett and I would go fishing just about any chance we got, and We'd take any fish that we caught home to his mom, who would just fry them up and then serve them up with some hush puppies and coleslaw. And we had some great times at that old fishing hole. But
Yeah,
after
the
a while,
Yosha
Brett
pose.
said
Yeah,
that
I
he'd
could do
found
that.
an even
That
better
seems like it
place
would
to
work
fish.
really well with
It
this.
was a longer walk than our first fishing spot, but Brett said that it was a much larger pond, which meant much larger
So I
fish.
think I'll do that.
So off we went one Friday afternoon to
Yeah.
check it out for the first time.
Yeah, yeet. Okay,
Brett was
I
right
could do
about
that.
it being a
All
much
right.
better pond. The only problem was,
Let
we
me get a
didn't know
new
that we were
canvas
intruding
going.
on anyone's spot. People can get real grouchy if you're too close to their preferred fishing spot, and downright angry if you try and supplant them altogether. So
Why
we were
is my OBS
actually
so
aware that
unbelievably...
someone might
Okay.
come along and take issue with us
It's
being
so
there.
unbelievably
And then lo and
disorganized.
behold, it took just hours before someone did. We were sitting on the edge of the pond when we suddenly heard someone yelling, "Hey, what the hell do you boys think you're doing?" And our heads spin around, and Brett and I both see this 50-something guy with a bald patch and a pot
Let's
belly,
get some
wearing a black
sketching
t-shirt and
going.
khaki shorts. We told him we were just fishing, and he started asking if we had permission, if our parents knew what we were doing, basically all this stuff to try and get us to leave. Brett starts talking back to the guy, asking if our new spot was on his land, and he said no, but that it must have been someone's land, and he'd call the cops on us if we didn't make ourselves scarce. I was about to suggest that we just leave and come back later or something when we heard another voice from the opposite side of us asking what the problem was. Brett and I once
I'm
again
trying to
turned
change
around
the
to see a
reference
second guy
picture on
walking
here, so
towards
just bear
us
with
from the
me,
opposite
guys.
direction. He looked to be about the same age as the guy trying to chase us off, but was taller, skinnier, and had well-combed hair and wore a cardigan, kind of like Mr. Rogers if Mr. Rogers wore glasses. The angry guy started explaining that we had no right to be fishing there, especially without a license, but then the guy with glasses
Oh my God,
said it was
it's
his
huge.
land that we were fishing on, and that we had his permission to be there. I remember how he said,
Bro was
"You
giant.
call the police if you like, but I don't think they'll appreciate you wasting their time, do you?" And the pot-bellied killjoy guy looked all flustered for a second, then walked off grumbling to himself about how kids got no respect these days. Now, once
Alright,
the guy
cool.
was out of
There we go.
earshot, we thanked the Mr. Rogers look-alike for having our backs and also for giving us permission to fish on his land. And he just chuckled and said, "This isn't my land," but that guy was a jerk-off. And he told us his
I
land
envi-
boundary was about a half-mile back, but
I
that he
envision the
liked
words
walking out that
being,
way because of
let's
all
get
the wildlife
sexy
and
just for
stuff.
no reason. Like, actually no
Seeing
reason.
as
My
we were
own
on
brain
public
has
land,
fooled me.
we'd have to relocate if the cops did show up. But Mr. Michaels, as he called himself,
Now ask for
had
your
brought us a
reference for
little
your
time
character.
before
I
anyone
actually
else
might
came
have an
along who found
idea for
reason
your
to
Dark
bother
Jedi
us.
bounty hunter look. Okay,
Obviously,
I'll give you
we
a
thought Mr.
reference
Michaels was
as
awesome.
soon as I'm
He
done
seemed very
stream, which
impressed
is in
by
a couple of
Brett's
minutes
improvised
anyways.
rods. And then after a brief exchange, he carried on with his nature walk, and we just carried on fishing. With it being our regular fishing spot, we visited
Always gotta
that
start
larger
off with a
pond as often
circle.
as we could that summer, and every so often, we'd spot Mr. Michaels out on one of his walks. At first, all he'd do was come talk to us a little, ask how the fish were biting, stuff like that. But then after a while, he'd see us, say hi, and then come back around 20 to 30 minutes later with some of his wife's baking or some cold cans of soda.
The
whatever we
Delito
could
sketch,
spare.
yes, of course.
Mrs. Michaels must have been an incredible
gonna be
baker because
fire.
whatever he brought us was guaranteed to be good. And sometimes he'd stop and eat with us, enjoying the scenery and asking us questions. Most of the time we talk about nothing in particular, either fishing or baseball or school. But then one day, Mr. Michaels asked us if either of us had girlfriends. Now, I was 12 and Brett was almost a whole year older at 13, and
That's kind of
though we'd
weird.
experienced very innocent crushes here and there, we didn't have girlfriends or anything like that. Mr. Michaels asked if there were any girls at school we liked, and having already discussed the topic, both me and Brett were like, "No, not really." Mr. Michaels laughed and told us, "Well, don't force it. The world's gonna tell you how you should want all sorts of different things, but the only thing you should be paying attention to is what your heart tells you." Pretty wholesome, right? We thought so too. I mean, we thought Mr. Michaels was just about the coolest person either of us had ever met, and having grown up without a stable father figure in my life, I definitely appreciated having someone like that around. especially when Brett had to go visit some relatives out of state and I was left on my own if I wanted to go fishing. I had my own homemade fishing rod by that point, so it wasn't like I had to ask Brett to borrow his.
Not
I used
okay
to
for
walk
school
down to the
faculty to
fishing
talk
hole
about
whenever
romance
I wanted,
relationships
dig up a
to their
few worms,
students
and
on
then
any
get
personal
to
level.
luring
No,
the
it
biggest
was
fish
immediately
possible
that
under
was
the
like
shallows.
a red flag.
Fishing was just as much fun as it was with Brett, but I used to worry about being alone. I was always short for my age, and with my slight stutter, people who didn't know me all that well tended to think that I was either much younger or much dumber than I was, which naturally made me a very ripe target for bullies. I didn't think that I had to worry about that out near the good old fishing spot, as I tended to just see Mr. Michaels on his walks or stopping by to deliver some muffins. But then one day, Mr. Michaels stopped by while I was fishing and started acting a little weird. He used to ask us questions from time to time, just about our lives and such, and that day, Mr. Michaels started asking me about my family. I told him everything, or at least almost everything. That I had moved around a lot, and that I had a dad, and then a stepdad, and then no dad at all. He then asked if
why
I
are
liked
you
living with my uncle,
telling
and I
this
said it was
story?
whatever, and that my mom would probably move us again soon.
Like, why are you telling this? I guess it's like
Mr. Michaels usually
'cause he,
has
like,
some piece
knows
of
the
worldly
guy, but it's
advice
kind
to
of
offer,
random.
something that would cheer us up or help us look on the bright side of things. But when I said that thing about probably moving soon, he didn't say anything at all. He just got up, walked off, without even saying goodbye. That wasn't like Mr. Michaels at all, but at the time I wondered if something I'd
yeah,
said
you're
hit a little too
you
close
fucked
for
up. You're
comfort.
dead, Dunzo. That's just red
I might
flag
have been
central,
12, but I
bro.
wasn't dumb. I knew grown-ups got upset over weird things, or not weird, but things they either couldn't or wouldn't explain to me. I figured it was either something like that, or that he felt guilty for bringing up a sensitive subject. I noticed a lot of adults seemed to show sympathy for me whenever the subject of family came up. It was something I've been dealing with ever since my parents' divorce back when I was like 6 or 7. So maybe Mr. Michaels just felt bad all of a sudden and walked off because he was kind of choked up. I say all this because I thought about it a lot. And
Gotta
I
do
did
some
so
chibi
because I had time
muscles.
to think about it a lot.
We'll see how it
Because
goes.
all I did after he walked off was sit there fishing for another few hours before finally calling it a day and walking back home with my meager catch. The next day I headed back down to the fishing hole after lunch, and after about an hour of sitting there, Mr. Michaels showed up again. He greeted me warmly as he approached, so I figured all of yesterday's awkwardness had been forgotten. He didn't bring it up at first, he just acted like it never happened, which was honestly fine by me because I didn't want to talk about it either. He just walked up, sat down next to me, and asked how the fishing was going. We made small talk for a few minutes about
Chibi
fishing,
muscles,
the weather,
yeah.
stuff like that, and then he said something like, "I want to apologize for just walking off like that yesterday." I told him it was fine, and he went on to explain that he too had grown up in an unstable family. My situation reminded him a little too much of his own, which, as I said, was one of my initial suspicions. Mr. Michaels then said that family wasn't always a matter of blood, and that the best part about growing up was that, at least to a degree, you got to choose your own family. I figured that was probably the poignant, life-affirming thing that he wished that he'd said the day before, and I appreciated it all the same. And I also appreciated it when he said that if I wanted to, I could consider him a member of that chosen family. But only if I really
More
wanted
red
to.
flags. I don't.
I told him sure, and thanked him, but I knew it was kind of a platitude. He just felt bad hearing a kid talk about the same kind of childhood he went through, and all he wanted to do was make me feel better about it. But like I said, I'd been experiencing the same thing almost all my life, so while I knew to just be polite and thank people for whatever it was they'd said, it wasn't like it was some Hollywood moment where I burst into tears like, "Well, gee whiz, Mr. Michaels, does that mean you're gonna be my new dad?" Instead, I asked Mr. Michaels if he had kids of his own, and he said yes. He had 2 girls, but they had all grown up and moved out, one to the city and one to college. I thought I'd figured out another reason why he liked me and Brett so much. We were like the 2 young sons that he never got to have. The next time that I went down to the fishing hole, it was Saturday. Brett was due back from his relatives on that Monday, so it was my last solo fishing session for the foreseeable future, and I was pretty sure that I'd see Mr. Michaels at some point with it being a weekend. I was there for maybe an hour or so before he showed up, and when he did, we did our usual thing of making small talk and watching the world go by, until he turned and asked me a question.
Also, Bacon, I quite literally
He asked if
put
I thought about what
chili
he'd
instead
said
of chibi
about a chosen
in my
family,
thumbnail
and
once
I said,
before, so...
Sure, a little. He then asked if I liked the idea of him being a kind of father figure to me. And while I said, sure, I guess, it wasn't entirely out of courtesy. I liked Mr. Michaels, and so did Brett, and although the whole chosen family thing seemed kind of cheesy to me, I thought it was coming from a good place, so I figured I'd just go along with it. But then, Mr. Michaels started acting strangely again.
We can't make the
He told me
Lido
that the
thick
bond of
guys,
family came
so...
with a certain kind of love. And
I'm
just
just
sat there
saying
wondering
that
where
in
he was going with that.
advance
And then he went
as
on
we
to say
start
that
to draw
over
the
previous
waist.
few weeks, he'd come to develop feelings of familial love, and that he'd been wondering if those feelings were reciprocated. He spoke real fancy like that at first, and I guess because he was beating around the bush. But I think that he must have saw the look on my face and figured it was there because I didn't understand him. Because in the next moment, he just straight up asked me if I loved him.
What?
There was a brief pause before he
What?
clarified that it was that familial love that he was talking about, and I remembered giving him a very reluctant, sure, I guess so. But he wasn't done. This is the point where I think Mr. Michaels was another one of those adults who thought that I was a little slow because of the way he was talking to me. It was like he was talking to a much younger kid, or maybe one with a learning disorder or something. 12 isn't 18, but I was still like, why is he talking to me like this? I knew something wasn't right. I just couldn't see exactly what was happening. Not until Mr. Michaels began to talk again. He told me that people who love each other sometimes touch one another as a way
Excuse
of expressing
me?
that love.
Nope,
And that's
run
the
away.
point where I started to feel truly
Yeah, run away,
uncomfortable.
run away, run away.
Mr. Michaels saddled up to me a little, and I remember feeling my body tense up as he did.
Run
I
away,
realized where he was
child.
going and what he was trying to do, and it made my skin feel like it was going to crawl off my bones.
Yeah, that's
Mr. Michaels
not
then
good.
asked in this sort of shaky voice if he could touch me as a way of expressing
Ah,
his
I
love.
hate.
And the moment he finished his sentence, I got up and walked off without
Good.
saying a
Oh
word,
my god, good.
just like he did the day before. I remember walking back to my uncle's house, and at the risk of sounding overly dramatic, it was almost like that part from the opening of Saving Private Ryan, if you know that movie. Do you remember the part where Tom Hanks is just kind of sat there on the beach and he's having some kind of episode where his ears are ringing and everything seems like it's really
Yeah, I didn't do
far
the
away?
feet yet.
That's honestly what it felt like walking back to my uncle's place. I just felt kind of numb. Like I was so trapped in my own thoughts that everything else seemed far away or like sort of background noise. And I walked into the kitchen via the back door, which was kept unlocked during the day so I could get in and out at will, and I walked straight past my mom and up to the guest bedroom without
I might
much
have
as
to
even looking
resize
at
the
her.
canvas for this one
And that
because
gave her a clue that there was
Delito
something
has
wrong,
very
so
tall hair.
She followed me up and asked me a few questions. And then
And it
all
might
came
not
spilling
fit
out of me,
on
along
this
with many,
canvas, so I
many
might need to make it
tears.
thinner and taller.
I think one of the worst things
think I'm
about
gonna
it
do
was
that.
I was old enough to actually understand what was happening. It's a terrible thought, but I guess some kids get touched so young that it becomes sort of a repressed
Ugh.
memory.
I don't
I'm
like
not a
hearing that.
psychologist, but I know that's a thing. But that obviously wasn't the case with me. And the second Mr. Michaels mentioned touching after asking if I loved him,
Yep.
my first thought was basically, oh my Jesus titty slapping Christ,
Excuse me?
is a predator.
Okay,
I wasn't
that
confused on what his intentions
that
were,
took me completely
even
out
if
of the
he
story.
was trying
What
to
is
put
that
such an
phrase?
innocent
What do you
mask on
what do
such
you
an
mean?
ugly
I've never
thing.
heard that in my life.
And honestly, it
What do you mean?
absolutely
What was
destroyed
that?
me. It was the idea that someone so nice, so seemingly
Okay.
nice anyway, could have such
I don't
vile intentions,
I don't
and that he could be
understand
so
what
cunning about
that
it.
phrase
I mean, he'd been
was.
slowly, steadily, and patiently grooming us for almost 2 whole months. He'd been working to earn our trust, waiting for the right moment. And then when he heard that my mom and I moved around a lot, and possibly coupled with
I
an
don't know,
assumption that I was
chat.
a
I don't know
little
what that
slow,
phrase was at
Mr.
all.
Michaels figured that I was the perfect target. He was wrong, of course, and I got away before he could do anything. But simply the fact that he considered me a target was something I found
No,
incredibly
legitimately,
disturbing and upsetting.
legitimately.
Now,
Also,
this was
hello,
back in the
Penumbra.
late
Welcome
70s,
to the
and
stream.
honestly,
We
I'm
are
not sure what
ending,
kind
like,
of
pretty much
reaction
right
it'd get
now.
but after I
Like,
told my
after the
mother,
story,
she
but
told my
I'm
uncle,
glad you were here
and
for
when my
whatever the
uncle
hell
told the
that
local
was.
sheriff. They did something.
Oh my
I
god.
don't know what it was, because I don't think they ever officially arrested Mr. Michaels. All I know is that one day I was told that I didn't have to worry about him anymore, and that he'd moved someplace far, far away.
It's freaking ridiculous.
We were told it was safe to go down to the good
Bacon,
fishing
you
hole
gotta go
again,
do your
without any fear of
laundry.
seeing old
Not
Mr.
a
Michaels
problem.
walking
I
up in
hope
his
that you have a
cardigan
wonderful
and with a
time doing
basket
your
of his
laundry and a
wife's
wonderful
baking.
rest of your day. We're ending,
But
like,
that
pretty
didn't have
much
the desired
right now.
effect, because I wasn't relieved to hear we'd never see him again. I was actually heartbroken. Brett was just as shocked as I was to find out Mr. Michaels was what he was, but his reaction mirrored my own in many respects. We were devastated to think that we wouldn't see him again, but not because we truly missed this guy, but because we realized Mr. Michaels never really existed in the first place, at least not in the way that he presented himself. It's kind of hard to articulate, I guess, but we knew we'd miss the Mr. Michaels who had our backs, who brought us food, and who gave us life advice. Only the brutal truth was that the version of Mr. Michaels we'd come to know was a lie. A person dreamed up by an incredibly dangerous predator whose goal was to lull us into a false sense of trust and security. And when the truth became clear, it changed the way I thought about adults for a long time. I guess you could call it our loss of innocence. The summer me and Brett realized that the world was much darker than it seemed. Many years later, when I was all grown up, I heard some radio evangelists talking about the devil. How he lies, how he deceives,
See,
how he
Delito's hair
tricks you
is
into
so
thinking
tall,
he's your best
chat.
friend before he turns and shows his real face. If that's the case, then I think I met him, and his name is Mr. Michaels.
I literally have to resize him again. His hair is too small. We're gonna leave it there. I don't want to... No, don't start another story. Don't start another story. Okay. We are gonna leave it here, though, for today, because I gotta skedaddle to go get ready for work and stuff. We're not gonna have any more streams this week, so I will post my stream schedule next week, either Sunday or Monday. I'm not 100% sure when I will post it, but I shall post it. I'm going to try to do some videos. I have been slacking a little bit on making videos and stuff like that for some time. So I'm going to come up with some video ideas, try to post them when I can. But for now, we're going to stick to less streaming and stuff like that as we normally do. Keep an eye out for next week. We're probably going to do that very long Paper Mario stream, depending on when I have time to do that. But yeah, that's going to be all from me today and for this week. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. And you all take care, behave, all of that stuff. Don't talk to strangers. Have a great weekend and night, everybody. Take care. I shall see you next week. Have a good one. Bye, 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 bye. See ya, see ya, see ya. Bye, 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 bye.